Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Family. Dale Matthews stood in his mahogany-paneled study, examining the quarterly reports spread across his antique oak desk. At 42, he had built Matthews Security Consulting from nothing into a multi-million-dollar enterprise specializing in corporate protection and private investigation. His steel-gray eyes, which had intimidated countless boardroom adversaries, now focused on the numbers that confirmed another record-breaking quarter. The sound of laughter drifted up from the garden below. Through the tall windows, he watched his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, chase butterflies across the manicured lawn of their sprawling estate in Connecticut's Gold Coast. Her golden curls bounced as she ran, reminding him of his wife, Angela, when they'd first met 15 years ago. Angela Matthews, formerly Angela Cahill, had been the ambitious young nurse who caught his eye during his recovery from military injury. She was 25 then, beautiful and seemingly devoted. Now 37, she maintained her striking appearance through expensive treatments and designer clothes that Dale's success afforded her. Yet lately, something had shifted in their marriage, a distance he couldn't quite place. Dale's younger brother-in-law, Shane Dennis, had joined their family circle 3 years ago when he'd completed his surgical residency. At 34, Shane was everything Dale wasn't. Charming where Dale was intense, sociable where Dale was reserved, and recently divorced after his wife left him for emotional unavailability. Angela had insisted they help Shane get established, even arranging for him to rent the guest house on their property. The irony wasn't lost on Dale that Shane, who specialized in pediatric surgery, had become Emma's favorite uncle. The little girl adored him, often spending hours in his company when he wasn't at the hospital. Dale had encouraged this relationship, believing Emma needed positive male influences beyond her often absent father. But tonight felt different. Dale had returned early from a business trip to Montreal, arriving home to find the house unusually quiet. Angela had claimed she was visiting her sister Cheryl, but Cheryl had called looking for her just an hour ago. Shane's car wasn't in the guest house driveway, though Dale had seen it parked behind the stables, an odd place to leave it. Dale's military training and investigative instincts, honed by years of exposing corporate espionage and infidelity, had taught him to trust his gut. And his gut was screaming that something was wrong. He moved to his desk drawer and retrieved a small digital recorder, one of many surveillance devices his company manufactured. As footsteps echoed in the hallway outside his study, Dale quickly activated the device and slipped it behind a stack of books. The door opened without a knock. Angela entered, her hair slightly disheveled, wearing the same dress she'd had on that morning, but with the top button undone. Behind her, Shane appeared, adjusting his shirt collar. "Dale." Angela's voice pitched higher than usual. "I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow." "Change of plans," Dale replied evenly, studying both their faces. "Where have you two been?" "I was showing Shane the new irrigation system for the back gardens," Angela said quickly. "He's thinking of having similar work done at his place." Shane nodded, but Dale noticed a slight tremor in his hands. The same tell Dale had observed in lying witnesses during depositions. "The system is impressive, Dale. Very thorough." "Indeed." Dale's tone remained neutral, but his mind was cataloging every inconsistency. The back gardens were visible from his study window, and he'd been here for 2 hours without seeing anyone. Angela's dress showed grass stains that weren't there at breakfast. Shane's hair had leaves in it. "Where's Emma?" Dale asked. "Sleeping over at the Jennings house," Angela replied. "Matthew called this afternoon asking if she could stay. I said yes since you weren't expected back." Dale nodded slowly. The Jennings were their neighbors, and their daughter was Emma's closest friend. It was a reasonable explanation, yet something about Angela's delivery felt rehearsed. "Well," Shane said, backing toward the door, "I should let you two catch up. Thanks for the tour, Angela." After Shane left, Angela moved to Dale's side, placing her hand on his shoulder. Her touch, once electric, now felt calculating. "How was Montreal?" "Productive." Dale turned to face her fully. "The Du Bois merger went through. We'll be expanding into European markets." "That's wonderful, honey." But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and Dale noticed she was scanning his desk, her gaze lingering on the stack of books where he'd hidden the recorder. "Angela," Dale said softly, "is there anything you need to tell me?" For a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw something like fear flicker across her features. But it was gone so quickly, he almost questioned whether he'd seen it at all. "What would I need to tell you?" she asked, her voice steady again. "Nothing, I suppose." Dale pulled her closer, studying her face. "I'm just tired. It's been a long day." That night, as Angela slept beside him, Dale stared at the ceiling and replayed every interaction, every micro-expression, every inconsistency. His phone buzzed with a text from his head of security, Corey Crane. "Package delivered to your office as requested. Content secure." Dale had asked Corey to install additional security cameras around the property while he was away, a precaution he'd been meaning to take for months. Now he was grateful for his paranoia. Tomorrow, he would review the footage. Tonight, he would plan. In his 20 years of investigating betrayals, Dale had learned that the most devastating discoveries often came not from grand gestures of deception, but from small, seemingly innocent lies that unraveled to reveal much darker truths. As he drifted off to sleep, Dale's last conscious thought was a promise to himself. If his suspicions proved correct, he would show no mercy. He had spent his life protecting others from betrayal. If his own family had betrayed him, they would learn why Dale Matthews had never lost a case, and why his enemies never forgot his name. Chapter 2. What Emma Saw. The next morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Dale sat at the breakfast table, reading the Wall Street Journal, while Angela prepared his coffee exactly as she had for 15 years, 2 sugars, a splash of cream. Emma's empty chair served as a reminder of her absence, the house feeling hollow without her chatter. "I'll pick up Emma around noon," Angela said, not looking at him. "The Jennings are taking the girls to that new indoor playground in Stanford." "I'll come with you," Dale replied casually. "I want to talk to Matthew about the security contract for his firm." Angela's hand trembled slightly as she set down his cup. "Oh, that's not necessary. I'm sure you have work to catch up on. Nothing that can't wait." Dale's tone brooked no argument. Family comes first. After Angela left for her morning yoga class, Dale retreated to his study and powered up the laptop connected to his new security system. The high-definition cameras Corey had installed provided crystal-clear footage of every angle of the property. He started with yesterday afternoon, fast-forwarding through hours of empty lawn and garden views until movement caught his attention. At 2:47 p.m., Angela's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. But instead of coming to the main house, she drove directly to the guest house where Shane was waiting outside. Dale slowed the playback to normal speed. Angela and Shane embraced immediately, not the casual hug of in-laws, but the desperate clutch of lovers reuniting. Shane's hands roamed her body as he pushed her against the car, their mouths locked together with urgent hunger. Dale's jaw tightened, but he continued watching with the detached professionalism that had made him successful. Evidence required complete documentation. They moved inside Shane's residence, disappearing from the exterior camera's view. But Dale had anticipated this. His installation included interior cameras in the guest house, positioned as security measures that Shane had agreed to months ago. What he saw next confirmed his worst fears. Angela and Shane's affair wasn't new. Their practiced intimacy spoke of months, possibly years of deception. But more disturbing were the fragments of conversation the microphones picked up. Dale suspects something. Angela panted between kisses. "How can you tell?" Shane's voice was muffled against her neck. "He's watching us differently, more carefully." Angela pulled back, her face serious. "And Emma? What about Emma?" "Last night, before the sleepover, she asked me why you and I were playing wrestling in Uncle Dale's study. She said she saw us through the window when she came back from feeding the horses." Shane went pale. "What did you tell her?" "That she must have been mistaken." "But Dale." Angela's voice dropped to a whisper. "If Emma tells him what she thinks she saw." "She's 7 years old," Shane said. "Kids imagine things all the time. This is Emma we're talking about. She's sharp, just like her father. And if Dale starts asking questions." Dale paused the recording, his blood running cold. Emma had witnessed their affair in his own study, the sacred space where he conducted his most sensitive business, where he'd built his empire. The violation felt like acid in his veins. But worse was the implication of their conversation. They weren't just worried about being discovered. They were discussing Emma as a potential problem to be solved. Dale fast-forwarded through more footage, looking for any other relevant interactions. At 4:23 p.m., he found it. Emma had returned home earlier than expected, running through the front door, calling for her mother. She'd searched the house before heading to the window of Dale's study, where she'd stood for several minutes watching something that made her small face scrunch in confusion. The timestamp showed this was exactly when Angela and Shane were inside the guest house. Whatever Emma had seen the night before in the study, it had been significant enough for her to look for more evidence. Dale's phone rang, interrupting his investigation. "Mr. Matthews." The voice belonged to Janet Morrison, his secretary. "There's a Dr. Harrison on line 1. Says it's urgent regarding your daughter." Dale's stomach dropped. "Put him through." "Mr. Matthews? This is Dr. Harrison from Greenwich Hospital. I need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident with Emma." "What kind of incident?" Dale's voice remained steady despite the ice forming in his chest. "She was brought in by your brother-in-law, Dr. Dennis. She collapsed at the Jennings house. Dr. Dennis is recommending immediate surgery. It appears to be severe tonsillitis that could lead to complications if not addressed urgently." Dale was already grabbing his keys. "I'm on my way." The drive to Greenwich Hospital took 12 minutes, a trip Dale made in 8, his mind racing through possibilities. Emma had been perfectly healthy yesterday. The timing felt wrong, too convenient, especially given what he'd discovered about Angela and Shane's concerns. He found Angela in the surgery waiting room, her face tear-streaked and hands trembling. "Dale, thank God you're here. Shane says her tonsils are severely infected. She could die if he doesn't operate immediately." "Where is Shane now?" "In surgery prep. He's the best pediatric surgeon in the state. Emma's in good hands." Dale studied his wife's performance, noting the slight overacting, the way she avoided direct eye contact. "When did Emma start showing symptoms?" "This morning, after I picked her up. She complained of a sore throat in the car, then started running a fever at the Jennings. By the time we got here, she was barely conscious." Before Dale could respond, Shane emerged from the surgical wing, still in scrubs but without the cap and mask. His expression was grave. "Dale, I need to speak with you both." Shane's voice carried the weight of devastating news. "We did everything we could, but the infection had spread too far. I'm so sorry we lost her." The words hit Dale like physical blows. Angela's scream of anguish echoed through the hallway as she collapsed into Shane's arms. Other families in the waiting room stared in sympathy at the grieving parents. But something in Shane's eyes, a flicker of satisfaction quickly masked by professional sorrow, triggered every instinct Dale had developed over years of reading people. This wasn't the face of a devastated uncle who'd lost his beloved niece. This was the face of a man who'd just solved a problem. As Angela sobbed against Shane's chest, Dale stepped back, his mind shifting into tactical mode. If this was performance, it was elaborate and risky. But if Emma had truly seen something that threatened Angela and Shane's secret? "I need to see her," Dale said quietly. "Dale, no," Angela whispered. "You shouldn't remember her that way. I need to see my daughter." Shane nodded reluctantly. "Of course. But please prepare yourself." They led him to a small viewing room where Emma's body lay covered by a white sheet. Dale approached slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. When Shane pulled back the sheet, Dale saw his daughter's peaceful face, pale but unmarked by any signs of struggle or distress. "What exactly happened during surgery?" Dale asked, his voice clinically detached. Shane launched into a detailed medical explanation about complications, bleeding, and cardiac arrest. But Dale was studying the body with the same analytical precision he'd used to examine crime scenes during his military service. Emma's skin tone, the positioning of her hands, the absence of any medical equipment or monitoring devices. Everything suggested she'd been lying here for hours, not minutes. "I'll need to make arrangements," Dale said finally. "Of course," Shane replied. I'll handle all the paperwork. Family privilege. As they left the hospital, Dale's phone buzzed with a text message. The number was unfamiliar, but the message made his blood freeze. Your daughter is safe. Meet me at the old warehouse on Harbor Road at midnight. Come alone, or she dies for real. A friend. Dale glanced at Angela and Shane, both still maintaining their grief-stricken performances. Neither seemed to have noticed his phone. For the first time since entering the hospital, Dale allowed himself to hope. But if Emma was alive, that meant the elaborate deception was even more sinister than he'd imagined. And if someone else was involved, someone with access to both Emma and inside knowledge of the plan, then the conspiracy ran deeper than just an affair. That night, as Angela sedated herself with grief and wine, Dale prepared for the most important meeting of his life. In his jacket pocket, he carried his Glock 19 and a small recording device. Whatever game Angela and Shane were playing, the rules were about to change. Chapter 3. The Revelation. The Harbor Road warehouse district at midnight was a graveyard of rusted metal and broken dreams. Dale parked his BMW in the shadow of an abandoned textile factory, his military training automatically cataloging escape routes and potential threats. The anonymous text had led him here with the impossible promise that Emma was alive, a hope that warred with his investigative instincts screaming that this was likely a trap. He moved through the darkness toward the specified warehouse, his Glock drawn but held low. The building loomed against the star-scattered sky, its broken windows like dead eyes watching his approach. A single light glowed from within, casting long shadows through the industrial skeleton. Mr. Matthews. The voice came from behind a stack of shipping containers. A figure emerged, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and the efficient bearing of medical professional. I'm Dr. Grace Weaver. I used to work with your brother-in-law. Where is my daughter? Dale's voice cut through the night air like a blade. Safe. But first, you need to understand what you've stumbled into. Grace stepped into the light, revealing tired eyes and the trembling hands of someone carrying enormous guilt. Shane Dennis isn't just having an affair with your wife. They've been planning something far worse. Explain. Now. Grace pulled out a tablet, its screen casting blue light between them. 3 months ago, Shane approached me with a proposal. He needed someone with access to the hospital morgue and crematorium, someone who could provide death certificates and handle difficult cases discreetly. Dale's finger tightened on his weapon's grip. What kind of cases? People who needed to disappear. Shane has been running a very specialized operation. Fake death for clients willing to pay enormous sums to escape their lives. Witness protection for criminals, husbands dodging alimony, executives fleeing fraud charges. The profit margins are astronomical when you can guarantee someone a completely clean slate. The pieces began forming a horrifying picture in Dale's mind. And Emma, your daughter witnessed Shane and Angela in your study 3 nights ago. But she saw more than just an affair. Grace swiped to security footage on her tablet. She saw Shane photographing documents from your safe. Corporate secrets, client files, military contracts. Information worth millions to the right buyers. The footage showed Emma standing in the doorway of Dale's study, watching as Shane used his phone to photograph papers spread across the desk while Angela served as lookout. The little girl had witnessed industrial espionage, not just adultery. Emma's too smart, Grace continued. Shane realized she would eventually tell you what she saw. So they arranged for her to die during routine surgery, then planned to sell her to one of Shane's international clients, people who pay premium prices for untraceable children. Dale's vision went red at the edges. You're telling me they planned to fake my daughter's death and traffic her? Shane has done this before, but always with adults who consented to disappear. Children are a new venture for him, more profitable and more permanent. Your wife provided the family access he needed. Where is Emma? Grace gestured toward the warehouse. Inside, but there's more you need to know. Shane isn't working alone. He has a partner, someone with connections to organized crime, families, and international trafficking networks. Someone with the resources to make people vanish permanently. They moved toward the warehouse entrance, Grace's keycard unlocking multiple security doors. I've been documenting Shane's operation for months, trying to find a way to expose him without destroying my own career. But when I learned they were targeting a child, the warehouse interior was divided into several sections. A medical facility complete with surgical equipment, a forge for creating false documents, and in the back, a series of small rooms that looked disturbingly like cells. The holding area, Grace explained grimly, where deceased clients wait for their new identities and transportation. In the last room, Dale found Emma sleeping on a small bed, breathing peacefully. She looked exactly as she had that morning, healthy, unharmed, and very much alive. The relief nearly drove him to his knees. "Daddy." Emma's eyes fluttered open as he knelt beside her. "I had the strangest dream. Uncle Shane gave me medicine and told me I was going on a special trip." Dale gathered his daughter into his arms, feeling her warm breath against his neck. "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here now. Is Mommy coming too?" Emma asked innocently. The question hit Dale like a physical blow. His daughter still trusted the woman who'd sold her to child traffickers. "We'll talk about Mommy later, baby." Grace appeared in the doorway. "Dale, we need to move quickly. Shane expects me to transfer Emma to his partner's facility tonight. When I don't show up." "Who is Shane's partner?" "Gustavo Guerra. He runs a legitimate import-export business as cover, but his real operation moves people and information across borders. Shane has been feeding him corporate intelligence for months. Your company's client list, security protocols, everything." Dale's mind shifted into tactical mode. How many people know about tonight's operation? "Just Shane, Angela, and Guerra's transportation team. They're expecting Emma to be delivered to a warehouse in Bridgeport at 2 a.m. Dale checked his watch, 12:47 a.m. He had just over an hour to turn the hunters into the hunted. "Grace, I need you to make that delivery." "What?" "Not Emma, but Shane and Angela need to believe everything went according to plan." Dale's voice carried the cold precision that had made him successful in corporate warfare. "I have an idea that will give us everything we need to destroy them." As they prepared to leave, Emma tugged on Dale's jacket. "Daddy, are you mad at Uncle Shane and Mommy?" Dale knelt to her level, looking into eyes that reflected his own intelligence and determination. "Why would you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because of what I saw in your study. They were taking pictures of your secret papers and saying bad words about you." Pride and fury warred in Dale's chest. His 7-year-old daughter had recognized corporate espionage when she saw it. "What kind of bad words?" "Mommy said you were stupid and that Uncle Shane was going to make lots of money from your files. She said after they got the money, they could go away together and I could live with Grandma Cheryl." The casual way Emma delivered this information, as if discussing a change in weekend plans rather than a family's destruction, revealed how little Angela had tried to hide her contempt from their daughter. Dale stood, his decision crystallizing. Angela and Shane had betrayed him, stolen from him, planned to traffic his child, and poisoned his daughter's innocence with their schemes. There would be no forgiveness, no mercy, no escape. "Grace," he said quietly, "I want you to make a phone call. Tell Shane there's been a complication, that Emma woke up during transport and had to be sedated again. By me, 3 hours. What are you planning?" Dale's smile was arctic. "Justice, the kind that doesn't require courts or juries." As they drove away from the warehouse with Emma sleeping safely in the back seat, Dale began planning the most important operation of his life. Shane and Angela thought they were predators who'd successfully eliminated a threat. They were about to learn they'd awakened something far more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. Chapter 4. The Architect's Design. Dale returned home at 3 a.m. to find Angela passed out on their bed, an empty wine bottle on the nightstand beside a half-empty bottle of prescription anxiety medication. She lay sprawled across the sheets, still wearing the black dress she'd chosen for their daughter's death, makeup smeared from hours of performed grief. He stood in the doorway studying the woman he'd loved for 15 years, searching for any trace of the devoted wife and mother she'd pretended to be. But all he saw now was an actress who'd given an award-worthy performance while selling their child to human traffickers. Emma was safely hidden at Corey Crane's secure facility, a converted estate that served as Dale's emergency operations center. Grace Weaver had made the call to Shane, reporting complications that would delay Emma's delivery by 12 hours. That gave Dale time to orchestrate something far more permanent than a simple rescue. In his study, Dale activated the secure communication system that connected him to his most trusted operatives. Matthews Security Consulting employed former military and intelligence personnel who specialized in situations where conventional law enforcement couldn't, or wouldn't, intervene. Corey, Dale spoke into the encrypted phone. I need a full tactical team prepared for Operation Reckoning. Authorization level black. Copy that, boss. Resources unlimited. Timeline 18 hours for deployment, 6 hours for execution. Done. And Corey? This one's personal. Understood, sir. Dale spent the next hour reviewing personnel files, selecting operators who'd proven their loyalty through years of dangerous assignments. Marcus Moody, his demolitions expert and former Navy SEAL. Eugene Frank, whose computer skills could penetrate any security system. Luke Darling, a psychological warfare specialist who could break anyone's mind without laying a finger on them. But this wasn't just about assembling a team. Shane and Angela's betrayal had revealed a cancer that needed to be completely excised. Guerra's human trafficking network, the corruption at Greenwich Hospital, the corporate espionage ring, all of it would burn. At 6 a.m., Angela stumbled into the kitchen wearing yesterday's clothes and yesterday's grief. She'd perfected the look of a devastated mother, complete with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. I can't believe she's gone, Angela whispered, pouring coffee with shaking fingers. Our little girl. Dale watched her performance with clinical detachment. The funeral arrangements need to be made. Shane offered to handle everything. He feels responsible, thinks he should have caught the infection earlier. How considerate of him. Angela looked up sharply, perhaps detecting something in his tone. Dale, are you angry with Shane? Because this wasn't his fault. The infection was too advanced. I'm not angry, Dale replied truthfully. Anger was a hot emotion, consuming and temporary. What he felt now was cold, calculating, and permanent. I'm grateful Shane tried so hard to save her. Relief flickered across Angela's features. He's devastated. I think he needs our support right now. Absolutely. Why don't you invite him for dinner tonight? We should discuss Emma's memorial service. Angela nodded eagerly, probably looking forward to more time with her lover while maintaining their cover story. That's a wonderful idea. Shane could use the comfort. After Angela left for another grief counseling session with her sister, Dale drove to his company's headquarters in Stanford. The 40-story glass tower housed one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations on the East Coast, disguised as a legitimate security consulting firm. In his executive conference room, Dale assembled his core team. Maps, photographs, and surveillance reports covered every surface. Electronic equipment hummed, with intercepted communications and real-time tracking data. Gentlemen, Dale began, we're dealing with a criminal conspiracy that includes human trafficking, corporate espionage, and attempted murder. The subjects are Shane Dennis, Angela Matthews, and Gustavo Guerra, along with an unknown number of associates. Marcus Moody studied the tactical photographs. What's the objective, boss? Complete elimination of the network. No arrests, no trials, no witnesses. Dale's voice carried the authority of a man who'd made life-and-death decisions in combat zones. Shane Dennis and Angela Matthews have forfeited their right to exist. Guerra's operation needs to disappear permanently. Eugene Frank looked up from his laptop. I've penetrated Guerra's communications network. His next shipment of merchandise moves through Port Newark tomorrow night. 12 people scheduled for transport to various international destinations. We'll intercept, Dale decided. Those people get genuine protection while we acquire intelligence on Guerra's entire operation. Luke Darling spread psychological profiles across the table. Dennis and your wife are amateurs playing in a professional game. Their terror when things start falling apart will provide significant leverage. The timeline, Dale continued, begins tonight. Angela and Shane expect to celebrate Emma's successful death while planning their escape with Guerra's blood money. Instead, they're walking into a trap that will consume them slowly and completely. Corey presented the technical specifications. Full surveillance package is deployed around their meeting locations. Every word, every move, recorded and documented. When this is over, we'll have enough evidence to bury anyone who tries to investigate their disappearances. Dale studied the faces of men who'd followed him through corporate wars and gray zone operations. Questions. Rules of engagement. Marcus asked. There are no rules. Shane Dennis planned to sell my 7-year-old daughter to child traffickers. Angela Matthews is his willing accomplice. They've destroyed the sanctity of my family and my home. Dale's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I want them to understand exactly what they've unleashed before they die. The team dispersed to their preparations, leaving Dale alone with his thoughts. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the Connecticut coast stretching toward Long Island Sound. This was the empire he'd built through discipline, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Shane and Angela had violated the most fundamental rule of warfare: never threaten what a dangerous man loves most. His phone buzzed with a text from Angela. Shane will come for dinner at 7. He's bringing wine to celebrate Emma's memory. Dale typed back, perfect. I'll prepare something special. As the sun set over his corporate kingdom, Dale Matthews began the final preparations for a war that would end with total victory or total destruction. But given his track record, there was really only one possible outcome. Shane and Angela had started this game thinking they were predators. They were about to discover they were prey. Chapter 5. The Web Titans. At exactly 7 p.m., Shane Dennis knocked on the front door of the Matthews estate, carrying a bottle of expensive champagne and wearing the solemn expression of a grieving uncle. Dale watched through the security monitors as Angela let him in, their embrace lasting several seconds longer than appropriate for in-laws mourning a child. Dale, Shane said, entering the dining room with manufactured sadness. I can't tell you how sorry I am about Emma. She was such a special little girl. She was everything to me, Dale replied, pouring wine into crystal glasses that had been wedding gifts 15 years ago. Please sit. Angela prepared Emma's favorite meal, a sort of memorial dinner. As they ate, Shane regaled them with stories of Emma's visits to the hospital, how the staff had adored her, how she talked about becoming a doctor like Uncle Shane. Angela dabbed at her eyes periodically, playing the devastated mother to perfection. But Dale was watching for micro-expressions, vocal stress patterns, and body language tells that revealed their true emotions. Shane kept checking his phone, while Angela's appetite seemed remarkably robust for a woman who'd lost her child 18 hours ago. I've been thinking about the funeral arrangements, Dale said during a lull in conversation. Something grand. Emma deserves the best. Actually, Shane interjected carefully, I was hoping we could discuss something delicate. The hospital administration is concerned about potential liability issues. They're recommending immediate cremation and a private service. Liability issues, medical malpractice lawsuits, media attention. These things can get messy when a child dies during routine surgery. Shane's performance was smooth, practiced. I think Emma would want us to remember her privately, without all the circus of a public funeral. Dale nodded thoughtfully. You're probably right. Keep it simple, keep it family. Relief flickered across both their faces. A cremation would eliminate any possibility of an autopsy that could reveal Emma was never actually dead. They thought they just sealed their victory. There's one thing troubling me, Dale continued conversationally. Emma mentioned seeing something strange the other night. She said she watched you and Angela through the study window, taking pictures of papers from my desk. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Angela's wine glass trembled in her hand, while Shane's face went pale. Children have such vivid imaginations, Angela said quickly. She probably saw us talking and thought. She was very specific. Dale interrupted gently, said you were photographing documents while discussing how much money you could make from my files. Shane set down his fork with mechanical precision. Dale, I think grief might be affecting your judgment. Why would we? She also mentioned you calling me stupid and planning to go away together while she lived with Grandma Cheryl. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Angela and Shane exchanged glances that confirmed everything Dale needed to know. Where is this coming from? Angela demanded, her mask beginning to slip. Our daughter just died, and you're inventing conspiracy theories? Inventing. Dale reached into his jacket and placed a small digital recorder on the table. This device was in my study for the past week. Would you like to hear what it captured? Shane lunged for the recorder, but Dale was faster, snatching it back and pressing play. Angela's voice filled the room. Dale's so trusting, he'll never suspect anything. By the time he discovers the missing files, we'll be halfway to Switzerland with Gara's payment. That's not. Angela started, then stopped as her own words continued playing. Shane's voice joined hers. The little brat saw too much. We need to handle the Emma problem before she talks. Dale stopped the recording, studying their faces as the reality of their exposure sank in. The Emma problem? You call my daughter a problem that needed to be handled? Dale, please, let us explain, Shane began. No explanation necessary. I understand perfectly. Dale's voice remained calm, conversational. You've been stealing corporate secrets, selling them to human traffickers, and planning to fake Emma's death so you could disappear with the profits. Angela jumped up from her chair. You don't understand the whole situation. I understand that you sold our daughter to child traffickers. The accusation hung in the air like a death sentence. Shane's face went white, while Angela staggered backward. That's not. We would never. Shane's composure finally cracked. Really? Then why did Dr. Weaver expect to deliver Emma to Gara's facility tonight? The mention of Grace's name hit them like physical blows. Shane sank into his chair, realizing the scope of Dale's knowledge. How long have you known? Angela whispered. Long enough to save my daughter and document your entire operation. Dale stood, moving to the window that overlooked the grounds. Emma is safe, by the way. Very much alive and very well cared for. Where is she? Angela demanded. Somewhere you'll never find her. Dale turned back to face them. The question now is what to do with the two people who tried to traffic my child. Shane attempted to regain control. Dale, we can work this out. The whole thing got out of hand, but we never intended. You never intended to get caught. Look, the money from Gara, we can split it. Make you a partner. We have contacts who would pay millions for your client files. Dale smiled for the first time that evening. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. Angela snapped, her true nature finally emerging. Your precious company, this house, your reputation, all of it's just money and ego. At least Shane and I are honest about what we want. And what do you want? Freedom from your suffocating control, your obsessive need to dominate everything around you. Shane offers me excitement, passion, a real life instead of being a trophy wife in your corporate museum. Dale absorbed her words without flinching. So you decided to steal my business secrets and sell my daughter to human traffickers. Emma would have been fine. Angela shouted. Gara has clients who've been waiting years for a child like her. She would have had everything, money, education, opportunities you could never provide. Opportunities as a trafficked child, as an adopted daughter to people who truly want her, not someone who sees her as an extension of his own ego. Dale nodded slowly. I see. You genuinely believe you were doing Emma a favor. We were saving her from becoming like you, cold, calculating, incapable of real emotion. Interesting perspective. Dale checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. Unfortunately, your business partners are expecting delivery of the merchandise in about an hour. Shane's phone buzzed with a text. His face went ashen as he read it. Problem? Dale asked. Gara's people are asking for confirmation of the delivery schedule. Then you better confirm it. Dale's tone turned deadly serious. Both of you are going to that warehouse. You're going to explain to Gara exactly how you lost his merchandise. And you're going to face the consequences of disappointing a man who kills people for far smaller mistakes. Dale, please, Shane begged. We can fix this. We can make this right. The only thing that can be made right now is justice. Dale pulled out his phone and dialed. Corey, it's time. Have Marcus and Eugene move to positions Alpha and Beta. Luke should begin phase 2 of the psychological protocol. What are you doing? Angela demanded. Completing your transaction with Guerra. You promised him a child, and he's going to be very unhappy when you arrive empty-handed. The color drained from both their faces as they realized the trap closing around them. You can't send us to Guerra, Shane whispered. He'll kill us. Yes, Dale agreed. He will. Very slowly and very painfully, once he understands that you not only lost his merchandise, but exposed his entire operation to a man with my resources. Dale moved toward the door, leaving them paralyzed with terror. The car is outside. You have 30 minutes to reach the warehouse, or Guerra's people will come looking for you here. I guarantee they won't be as merciful as I am. As he walked away, Angela screamed after him. You're a monster. Emma will hate you for this. Dale paused at the doorway. Emma will never know what happened to the people who try to sell her, but she'll grow up safe, loved, and protected by someone who would burn the world down before letting anyone hurt her. The last thing he heard as he left was Shane's broken voice. What have we done? Oh God, what have we done? Dale didn't answer. They'd made their choices, and now they would face the consequences. In exactly 28 minutes, Angela and Shane would discover that Dale Matthews never bluffed, never forgave, and never forgot. The architect's design was nearing completion. Chapter 6, The Devil's Bargain. The abandoned warehouse in Bridgeport resembled a concrete tomb in the industrial wasteland of Connecticut's Forgotten Coast. Angela's Mercedes pulled into the empty parking lot at exactly 10:15 p.m., 15 minutes late, a delay that hadn't gone unnoticed by the figures waiting in the shadows. Dale watched through military-grade night vision from his position atop a nearby shipping container, communicating with his team through encrypted earpieces. Marcus and Eugene had established perimeter control, while Luke monitored communications from a mobile command center disguised as a maintenance van. Subjects approaching the warehouse. Dale whispered into his microphone. Angela's shaking like a leaf. Shane looks ready to bolt. Guerra's people are already inside, Eugene reported. 4 vehicles, estimated 12 personnel. Heavy weapons confirmed. Through his scope, Dale observed Angela and Shane approaching the warehouse entrance. Their body language screamed terror and desperation, exactly the state of mind he'd intended to create. The warehouse door opened, revealing Gustavo, Guerra himself. At 52, Guerra projected the dangerous charisma of a man who'd built an empire on human suffering. His expensive suit and gold jewelry contrasted sharply with the industrial setting, while the armed men flanking him left no doubt about his true nature. Dr. Dennis, Mrs. Matthews. Guerra's accent carried the refined menace of educated violence. You're late, and I don't see my merchandise. Dale activated the long-range microphone system that would capture every word of the conversation. This recording would serve multiple purposes in the coming hours. There are complications, Shane began, his voice cracking with stress. What kind of complications? Angela stepped forward, attempting to salvage their situation. The child woke up during transport. We had to sedate her again, but she fought the drugs. Our contact at the hospital is running additional blood work to ensure there was no permanent damage. Guerra studied them with the cold calculation of a predator evaluating prey. Dr. Weaver reported no such complications when she called this afternoon. The mention of Grace's name sent visible shocks through both Angela and Shane. They'd assumed their plan was proceeding smoothly, unaware that Dale had turned their own coordinator against them. Grace, what did she say exactly? Shane asked weakly. That the merchandise was ready for delivery at 10 p.m. Yet here you are, empty-handed and making excuses. Guerra circled them slowly, his movements precise and threatening. In my business, reliability is everything. When someone promises to deliver a product and fails, it raises questions about their competence and their honesty. The girl is valuable, Angela said desperately. Healthy, intelligent, from an affluent family. Your clients will pay premium prices for someone of her quality. My clients have already paid. They're expecting delivery within 48 hours to complete their own arrangements. Guerra stopped directly in front of them. The failure to deliver will cost me significant reputation and revenue. Dale smiled grimly from his concealed position. Guerra was performing exactly as expected. A businessman angry about a disrupted transaction, unaware that he was being maneuvered into position for complete destruction. "We can make this right," Shane pleaded. "Give us another 24 hours. The child will be ready for transport, I guarantee it." "Guarantees." Guerra laughed without humor. "You guaranteed delivery tonight. Why should I believe your new promises?" "Because we have too much invested in this to fail," Angela insisted. "The information we provided about my husband's company, the access to his client networks, we've given you everything you asked for. Information is worthless if you can't deliver the primary merchandise." Dale's earpiece crackled with Luke's voice. "Boss, we've got incoming vehicles." 3 black SUVs approaching from the east. License plates match Guerra's secondary team. The situation was about to become significantly more complicated. Guerra had brought backup, suggesting he'd anticipated problems with this transaction. "I'm disappointed," Guerra continued inside the warehouse. "Dr. Dennis, you presented yourself as a professional who could handle complex operations. Mrs. Matthews, you claimed your husband was too trusting to discover our arrangement. Yet here we are, dealing with amateur hour complications." "My husband doesn't suspect anything," Angela lied desperately. "Dale thinks our daughter died during surgery. He has no idea about our partnership with you." Dale's jaw tightened at hearing his name spoken so casually in the context of their betrayal. But he maintained professional composure as Guerra's reinforcements took positions around the warehouse perimeter. "Then where is the merchandise?" Guerra demanded. Shane's composure finally collapsed completely. "The truth is, we think Dale might know something. Our daughter saw us together in his study, saw us photographing his files. We had to accelerate the timeline to protect the operation." Guerra's expression turned deadly. "You're telling me the target's father is aware of your activities?" "No. Well, maybe. We're not sure what he knows. Uncertainty is unacceptable in my business." Guerra gestured to his men, who immediately moved to surround Angela and Shane. The implications were clear. This conversation was heading toward a permanent resolution. "Please," Angela begged. "We can still deliver. Dale doesn't know about you or your organization. Even if he suspects us, he can't connect us to your operation." "Actually," Dale said, stepping out of the shadows with his weapon drawn, "I know everything." The warehouse erupted into chaos. Guerra's men reached for their weapons while Angela screamed and Shane dove behind a shipping container. But Dale's team had positioned themselves perfectly. Marcus emerged from the opposite entrance while Eugene blocked the rear exit, both armed with military-grade assault rifles. "Nobody moves," Dale commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Weapons on the ground, hands visible, or this ends very badly for everyone." Guerra showed remarkable composure for a man facing unexpected opposition. "Mr. Matthews, I presume. Your reputation for tactical planning appears to be well-deserved. Drop your weapons." "Now, I think you misunderstand the situation," Guerra replied calmly. "You're outnumbered 12-3. My people have families to protect, which makes them considerably more motivated than your corporate mercenaries." "Corey," Dale spoke into his earpiece. "Light them up." Suddenly, every window in the warehouse exploded inward as Luke's team launched flashbang grenades from concealed positions. The deafening explosions and blinding light sent Guerra's men stumbling blindly, while Dale's team, equipped with tactical gear, maintained complete situational control. In the chaos, Dale moved toward Angela and Shane, who were huddled together behind inadequate cover. "End of the line," he told them quietly. "Dale, please," Angela sobbed. "I'm still Emma's mother. She needs me." Emma needed a mother who wouldn't sell her to human traffickers. Shane looked up with desperate eyes. "I can give you everything. Guerra's entire network, client lists, financial records. I have access to information worth millions. Information I'll extract from Guerra directly." As the smoke cleared, Dale's team had efficiently subdued Guerra's personnel. The human trafficker himself sat zip-tied to a metal chair, blood trickling from a cut above his eye, but his composure intact. Impressive coordination, Guerra admitted. Your daughter's safety was never truly at risk, was it? My daughter has been safe since yesterday. This was always about justice. Justice? Guerra smiled coldly. You're about to torture and murder 12 people. How is that justice? You're right, Dale replied thoughtfully. It's not justice. It's war. He turned to Angela and Shane, who were now secured with zip ties and watching in terror. You wanted to know what kind of man I really am? You're about to find out. Dale pulled out a satellite phone and dialed a number that connected him to contacts built over decades in military and intelligence communities. This is Matthews. Authorization, Delta 77. I need a black site extraction team and my coordinates. 13 subjects for enhanced interrogation and permanent disposal. Angela's face went white. You can't do this. You're not a killer. I was a killer long before I became a businessman, Dale replied matter-of-factly. The only difference is now I choose my targets more carefully. The sound of helicopters approaching from the distance marked the beginning of the final phase. Shane began hyperventilating while Angela cursed him with words that would have made seasoned soldiers blush. Any last words for Emma? Dale asked them. Tell her we loved her, Angela whispered. No, I'll tell her that her parents died in a car accident. She'll grow up without ever knowing she was betrayed by the people who should have protected her most. As the helicopters touched down outside, Dale felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Complete satisfaction. The architect's design was perfect, and the execution had been flawless. Shane, Angela, and Guerra would disappear into a system designed for people who didn't officially exist. Their fate would be slow, thorough, and educational for anyone else who might consider threatening Dale Matthews' family. Emma would grow up safe, loved, and protected by a father who had proven there were no limits to what he would do to keep her secure. The devil's bargain was complete. Chapter 7. Blood and Revelation. The black site facility, hidden in the Adirondack Mountains, operated beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement. Built during the Cold War and maintained by private military contractors, it served as a place where dangerous people disappeared and uncomfortable questions were answered through methods that courts would never sanction. Dale stood before a wall of monitors displaying 12 separate interrogation cells, each containing one of Guerra's associates. In the center cell, Guerra himself sat strapped to a chair that had been specifically designed to cause maximum discomfort while inflicting no permanent damage, yet. Angela and Shane occupied separate cells, their initial defiance having dissolved into whimpering terror as they realized the true scope of Dale's capabilities. They'd spent the last 18 hours watching Dale's interrogation specialists extract information from Guerra's network using techniques that reduced hardened criminals to sobbing confessions. Status report. Dale said to Luke Darling, who'd been coordinating the psychological warfare campaign. Guerra's financial networks are completely mapped. We have bank accounts in 17 countries, property holdings, client lists, and operational detail for the last 5 years of human trafficking. Luke consulted his tablet. The bastard's been moving an average of 200 people annually. And the current inventory? 43 people in various stages of the pipeline. Men, women, and 12 children. All awaiting transport to buyers across 3 continents. Dale nodded grimly. Extraction status? Marcus and Eugene's teams have identified all holding facilities. We can liberate the entire inventory within 6 hours and have them in legitimate protective custody before anyone realizes Guerra's operation has been eliminated. Through the monitors, Dale watched Angela pace her cell like a caged animal, while Shane sat motionless in a corner, staring at nothing. They'd been forced to witness every detail of Guerra's interrogation, understanding that their turn was approaching. What about their families? Dale asked, referring to Guerra's personnel. Standard protocol. Wives and children will receive generous life insurance payments and relocation assistance. Official story is industrial accident at Guerra's legitimate import business. Dale approved the psychological profile assessments that Luke had prepared. Guerra's people were mostly desperate men who'd fallen into trafficking through circumstances rather than choice. Their families deserved protection, not punishment. Time to finish this, Dale decided. He entered Guerra's cell, where the human trafficker looked considerably less composed than he had 12 hours earlier. Professional interrogation had extracted every detail of his operation, but Guerra's eyes still held the defiant spark of a man who'd survived worse situations. "Your network is finished," Dale informed him matter-of-factly. "Every account frozen, every property seized, every contact identified and neutralized. 43 people you were planning to sell are now free. You think you're some kind of hero?" Guerra spat blood from his split lip. "Those people chose to disappear. I was providing a service. The children chose to disappear." Guerra's silence confirmed what Dale already knew. Whatever twisted justification Guerra used for trafficking adults, he had no defense for the children. "Your operation generated approximately $12 million annually," Dale continued. "Money that could have built schools, hospitals, legitimate businesses. Instead, you chose to profit from human misery. Spare me the moral lecture. You've tortured and murdered 12 people tonight. How does that make you better than me?" "I haven't murdered anyone yet," Dale replied calmly. "That comes next." He left Guerra's cell and moved to Shane's, where his former brother-in-law looked up with hollow eyes that had seen too much horror in the past day. "Dale, please," Shane whispered. "I know what we did was wrong, but Emma's safe now. Isn't that enough?" Dale pulled up a chair and sat facing Shane. "Tell me about the first time you sold information to Guerra." "It started as a single transaction. Angela found some client files in your study, just basic corporate stuff. Guerra paid $50,000 for the information. And then he wanted more. Security protocols, employee records, financial data. The money was incredible. More than I made in 6 months of surgery." "When did trafficking children become part of the arrangement?" Shane's face crumpled. Guerra mentioned it as a hypothetical. Said he had clients who would pay enormous sums for untraceable children. But it was just talk until Emma saw too much. She was going to tell you everything. About us, about the files, about the money. We panicked. Dale studied Shane's broken expression. "So you decided to fake her death and sell her to child molesters." "It wasn't supposed to be like that." Guerra said his clients were legitimate families who couldn't adopt through normal channels. Rich people who wanted children but couldn't pass background checks for minor reasons. Minor reasons like being pedophiles and child killers. Shane began sobbing. "We didn't know. I swear we didn't know what kind of people they really were." Dale found himself almost believing Shane's claim of ignorance, which made the betrayal even more infuriating. His brother-in-law had been willing to sell Emma without even bothering to investigate where she would end up. What was the plan after Emma was delivered? Angela and I would disappear. New identities, new lives in South America. Guerra had connections who could make us completely untraceable, leaving me to believe my daughter was dead while you lived on blood money. Shane nodded miserably. "We thought you'd eventually move on, maybe remarry. You're successful enough to start over." The casual way Shane dismissed 15 years of marriage and Dale's love for Emma revealed a level of selfishness that defied comprehension. Dale moved to Angela's cell, where his wife stood defiantly despite her circumstances. "Still playing the victim?" he asked. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Angela accused. "Finally have an excuse to show everyone what a controlling monster you really are." "I'm a monster?" Dale laughed without humor. "You tried to sell our daughter to human traffickers. To save her from becoming like you, cold, emotionless, obsessed with control and dominance. At least Guerra's clients would have given her love and attention." Guerra's clients included a convicted pedophile in Bangkok, a snuff film producer in Romania, and an organ harvesting operation in Moldova. Angela's face went white as the reality of her daughter's fate finally penetrated her delusions. That's not possible." Guerra said they were families. Guerra said whatever you needed to hear to get Emma delivered. Angela slumped against the wall, the last of her defiance crumbling. "Oh God, what did we almost do? You almost sold our 7-year-old daughter to people who would have tortured her, raped her, and eventually killed her for entertainment. The brutal truth hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Angela began vomiting from the horror of understanding what she'd really been planning. "But you stopped it," she gasped between retches. "Emma's safe. Can't that be enough?" Dale considered her question seriously. In the abstract, she was right. Emma was safe. The trafficking network was destroyed. Justice had been served. But the abstract didn't account for the violation of trust, the betrayal of family, the casual willingness to sacrifice their child for money and sexual freedom. "No," he said finally. "It's not enough." Dale returned to the monitor room, where Luke was preparing the final phase of the operation. "Everything's ready," Luke reported. "Guerra's offshore accounts will fund a new charitable foundation for trafficking victims. His legitimate businesses will be sold with proceeds going to law enforcement training programs. And his personal assets will establish a trust fund for Emma's future. And the principals? Guerra will have a heart attack in his cell within the hour. Natural causes, brought on by the stress of interrogation. Shane and Angela will attempt suicide together using smuggled pills. A tragic ending to their guilt over Emma's death." Dale nodded approvingly. The official story would satisfy any investigation while ensuring that no one ever learned the truth about Emma's kidnapping. But first, there was one final conversation to have. Dale returned to Angela's cell, where she sat curled in a corner, still processing the horror of what she'd almost accomplished. "I have a question for you," he said quietly. She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "If Emma had died during the surgery, really died, would you have felt any genuine grief?" Angela considered the question for a long moment before answering with devastating honesty. "I don't know. I think I stopped loving her the way a mother should when I fell in love with Shane. She became an obstacle to my happiness instead of my daughter." The admission was more chilling than any of the physical threats or criminal conspiracies. Angela had genuinely stopped loving their child, viewing Emma as nothing more than inconvenience to be eliminated. "Thank you for your honesty," Dale said. "It makes what happens next much easier." He left the cell and activated the final protocol. Within minutes, Guerra would be dead from an untraceable cardiac event. Shane and Angela would follow shortly after, victims of their own guilt and despair. The official record would show that a pediatric surgeon and his lover had died by suicide after accidentally causing the death of their beloved daughter during routine surgery. Guerra would have a heart attack brought on by the stress of a federal investigation into his import business. Emma would grow up believing her parents had died in a tragic accident, never learning that they'd tried to sell her to monsters. Dale would raise her with the help of trusted allies, ensuring she became strong, intelligent, and capable of protecting herself. As the monitors went dark one by one, Dale felt the satisfaction of perfect justice. The architect's design was complete, the threats eliminated, and his daughter's future secured. Emma was safe. His enemies were dead, and no one would ever threaten his family again. The blood and revelation had served their purpose. Chapter 8. The Perfect Storm. 3 months after the night that changed everything, Dale Matthews stood in his redesigned study, watching Emma play in the garden through bulletproof windows that had replaced the standard glass. The room bore no resemblance to the space where Angela and Shane had photographed his corporate secrets. Dale had burned everything and rebuilt from the foundation up. Emma seemed to have adapted remarkably well to her new life. The official story was that her parents had died in a car accident while she was visiting relatives, and Dale's cover story had been so thoroughly constructed that even Emma's child psychologist believed it completely. At 8 years old now, she displayed the same sharp intelligence that had nearly saved her life, but without the trauma that could have destroyed her. "Daddy," Emma called from the garden, "Aunt Grace is here." Dr. Grace Weaver had become Emma's unofficial guardian and Dale's closest ally since the operation. Her testimony had been crucial in documenting Guerra's trafficking network, and her medical expertise had helped explain Emma's recovery from her supposed illness. More importantly, she provided the maternal influence that Emma needed while understanding the security requirements that defined their new life. Dale watched Grace approach the house, noting the slight tension in her movement that suggested something was wrong. As Emma's primary care physician and one of only 3 people who knew the complete truth about that night, Grace's concerns carried significant weight. "We need to talk," Grace said quietly as Emma ran ahead into the house. In the secure conference room adjacent to his study, Grace spread out a series of photographs and documents that made Dale's blood run cold. "These arrived by courier this morning," she explained. "No return address, no identifying marks, but the content suggests someone knows more than they should." The first photograph showed Emma playing in their garden, clearly taken from outside the estate's perimeter. The second showed Dale entering his corporate headquarters. The third showed Grace leaving the hospital where she worked. But it was the final document that sent ice through Dale's veins, a detailed timeline of events from the night of Emma's supposed death, accurate to the minute and including details that only someone with inside knowledge could have known. "Who else could have this information?" Dale asked, his mind already shifting into threat assessment mode. "The only people who knew the complete operation were you, me, your team, and—" Grace hesitated. "And there's something I never told you about that night. When I left the warehouse with the equipment Guerra's people expected to see, I was followed. I managed to lose them, but someone was definitely conducting surveillance." Dale's jaw tightened. "Why didn't you report this immediately?" "Because I thought it was just Guerra being cautious. But if someone else was watching the warehouse that night, if they saw what really happened..." The implications were staggering. If a third party had witnessed the operation and documented Emma's rescue, they possessed information that could destroy the carefully constructed narrative Dale had built around his daughter's new life. "Have you shared this with anyone else?" "Of course not. But Dale, whoever sent these photos, knows Emma is alive. They know he faked her death, and they know what happened to Angela and Shane." Dale studied the surveillance photos more carefully, noting the professional quality and angles that suggested military or intelligence training. "These aren't the work of amateurs." His secure phone rang, the number reserved for only the most urgent communications. Corey Crane's voice carried unusual stress. "Boss, we've got a problem. Someone just deposited $5 million into the Matthews Foundation account with a note saying it's payment for services rendered." "What services?" "Eliminating the Guerra trafficking network. The wire transfer originated from a bank in Switzerland, but the routing suggests it bounced through at least 6 countries before reaching us." Dale felt the familiar sensation of walls closing in. "Any other communication?" "Just the deposit slip with a handwritten note. Your daughter's secret is safe with us. Consider this a down payment for future cooperation." The message was clear. Someone with significant resources knew everything about the operation and was positioning themselves for leverage over Dale's family. "Corey, initiate Protocol 7. Full security sweep of all properties, complete communications analysis, and activate the emergency relocation procedures." "Copy that, boss." Dale ended the call and turned to Grace, whose face had gone pale. "What's Protocol 7? "Complete lockdown. If someone's trying to leverage Emma's situation, they're about to discover what happens when you threaten my family." But even as Dale spoke the words, he felt an unfamiliar sensation, uncertainty. For the first time in his adult life, he was facing an enemy whose capabilities and motivations were completely unknown. The next morning brought another courier delivery, this time to Dale's corporate office. The package contained a single photograph: Emma walking to school, accompanied by her security detail, taken from an impossible angle that suggested the photographer had been positioned inside the supposedly secure perimeter. The accompanying note was brief: "Impressive security arrangements, but not quite sufficient. We need to meet. Today. Central Park, Bethesda Fountain, 3 p.m. Come alone, or Emma's story becomes tomorrow's headlines." Dale stared at the message, analyzing every word for clues about his unknown adversary. The choice of Central Park suggested someone comfortable operating in high-visibility public spaces. The demand to come alone indicated confidence in their ability to control the situation. The threat to expose Emma's story revealed they understood exactly how devastating such revelation would be. By 2:45 p.m., Dale was positioned near Bethesda Fountain, his team providing invisible perimeter security while he waited for contact. The autumn afternoon was crowded with tourists and locals, providing perfect cover for surveillance and counter-surveillance operations. At exactly 3 p.m., a woman approached his bench. She appeared to be in her early 40s, professionally dressed, with the controlled bearing of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. Most striking were her eyes, intelligent, calculating, and completely familiar. "Mr. Matthews," she said, settling beside him on the bench. "Thank you for coming. Do I know you? Not personally, but you knew my husband very well." She pulled out a photograph of Gustavo Guerra. "My name is Melissa Guerra. I was Gustavo's business partner long before I became his wife." Dale's hand moved instinctively toward his concealed weapon, but Melissa raised her hand peacefully. "I'm not here for revenge," she continued. "Quite the opposite. I'm here to offer you a partnership." Partnership? My husband's operation was profitable, but limited by his lack of imagination. You eliminated him and his network with surgical precision, rescued 43 trafficking victims, and covered your tracks so completely that no one suspects what really happened. Dale remained silent, waiting for her to reveal her true intentions. "I've spent 3 months analyzing your methods, studying your security arrangements, researching your business practices. You're exactly the kind of partner I need for my next venture." "What kind of venture?" Melissa smiled coldly. "Justice. My husband was a small player in a much larger game. There are networks of traffickers, corrupt officials, and child predators operating across the globe with complete impunity. They need to be eliminated, and I need someone with your particular skills to help me do it. And if I refuse, then Emma's story becomes public knowledge. Your business empire collapses under investigation, and she grows up knowing that her father is a vigilante killer who destroyed her family." The threat was delivered with casual precision, confirming that Melissa Guerra represented a level of sophistication Dale hadn't anticipated. "But if I agree, then Emma remains safely anonymous. Your business continues to prosper, and together we eliminate some of the most dangerous predators on Earth. You get to protect innocent children while I get revenge against the animals who corrupted my husband's legitimate business interests." Dale studied Melissa's face, searching for deception or weakness. "What makes you think I'm interested in becoming an international assassin?" "Because you've already started. Guerra's network was just the beginning. There are hundreds of operations like his, thousands of children at risk, and no one with the resources and ruthlessness necessary to stop them." She pulled out a tablet displaying photographs and documents. "This is the Kowalski Syndicate operating out of Prague. They specialize in children under 10. This is the Yamamoto Group in Tokyo. They run forced organ harvesting operations. This is the Petrov Collective in Moscow. Their clients prefer live entertainment that doesn't survive the experience." Each image was more horrifying than the last, showing the scope of international trafficking that law enforcement couldn't or wouldn't address. "You could spend the rest of your life protecting just Emma," Melissa continued, "or you could help me protect thousands of children who don't have fathers capable of saving them." Dale closed the tablet, his mind processing the implications. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership. Your tactical expertise and resources, my intelligence networks, and international connections. We identify trafficking operations, eliminate the principals, rescue the victims, and disappear before anyone realizes what happened. And Emma remains completely protected, better than protected. She grows up in a world where fewer monsters prey on children." Dale stared across the fountain at families enjoying the autumn afternoon, parents pushing strollers, children feeding ducks, couples walking hand in hand. None of them aware of the horrors that Melissa's tablet had documented. "I need time to consider this." "Of course, but don't take too long. The Kowalski Syndicate is planning to move 20 children next week. Every day you delay means more victims." Melissa stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing, Mr. Matthews. I know you're wondering how I survived your operation against my husband's network. The thought had occurred to me. I was never part of Gustavo's trafficking business. I ran his legitimate operations while he handled the uglier side of things. When you eliminated his network, you actually did me a favor. I inherited everything without the complications. And now you want to use those resources for vigilante justice." I want to use them to finish what you started. The question is whether you're brave enough to become the kind of father Emma really needs. One who makes the world safer for all children, not just his own. As Melissa walked away, Dale remained on the bench, staring at the tablet full of horrors. She was right about one thing. The Gera operation had been just the beginning. There were monsters operating around the world with complete impunity, and conventional law enforcement couldn't touch them. But accepting Melissa's partnership would mean embracing a life of perpetual warfare against an endless enemy. It would mean raising Emma in the shadow of constant danger while using her safety as justification for becoming something more dangerous than the criminals he hunted. The perfect storm was gathering, and Dale Matthews had to decide whether to seek shelter or ride it to its ultimate conclusion. Emma's laughter echoed across the park as she played with other children, blissfully unaware that her father was contemplating becoming the world's most dangerous man in order to keep her world safe. The architect's design was about to expand far beyond anything he'd originally imagined. Chapter 9. The New Kingdom. 6 months later, Dale Matthews stood on the balcony of a penthouse overlooking Monaco Harbor, watching the sun set over the Mediterranean while Emma practiced violin in the music room behind him. The girl had taken to their new international lifestyle with remarkable adaptability, treating their frequent travels as grand adventures rather than security necessities. The transformation had been complete and irreversible. The public Dale Matthews, CEO of Matthews Security Consulting, had suffered a tragic family loss and thrown himself into philanthropic work, establishing foundations that supported law enforcement training and victim advocacy programs around the world. The private Dale Matthews had become something else entirely. The Prague operation was flawless, Melissa Guerra said, joining him on the balcony with a glass of wine and a satisfied expression. 20 children recovered, the Kowalski syndicate eliminated, and the Czech police are crediting improved international cooperation for the breakthrough. Over the past 6 months, their partnership had evolved into something more efficient and deadly than either had originally imagined. Melissa's international connections and Dale's tactical expertise had created a network capable of striking anywhere in the world with surgical precision. Any complications? Dale asked, though he already knew the answer. Their operations had become so sophisticated that local authorities usually thanked them for their assistance without realizing they'd been manipulated. None. The evidence packages we planted will keep Prague investigators busy for months, and the victims are already in protective custody. Most will be reunited with their families within the week. Dale nodded, feeling the familiar satisfaction of another successful mission. The Kowalski syndicate had been operating for 15 years, trafficking children across Eastern Europe with complete impunity. Their elimination had probably saved hundreds of future victims. What's next on the list? Melissa consulted her tablet, scrolling through intelligence reports from their global network of sources. The Nakamura Group in Kyoto is planning a major shipment. 40 children destined for clients in Southeast Asia. We have a window of opportunity when they consolidate the merchandise for transport. Timeline: 2 weeks. I've already arranged for Emma's placement in the International School of Geneva while we're operational. Dale had initially resisted involving Emma in their lifestyle, but Melissa had convinced him that hiding their activities would only create suspicion. Instead, Emma believed her father's frequent travels were business-related, while their security arrangements were explained as necessary precautions for wealthy international families. The strategy had proven remarkably effective. Emma was learning 4 languages, receiving world-class education, and developing the cultural sophistication that would serve her well in any future she chose. More importantly, she remained completely unaware of the violence that protected her innocence. There's something else, Melissa continued, her tone becoming more serious. Intelligence suggests the networks are starting to coordinate their defenses. They know someone is systematically eliminating trafficking operations. Coordinated how? Shared security, mutual early warning systems, collaborative efforts to identify the threat. They're adapting faster than we anticipated. Dale had expected this development. Criminal organizations that survived long-term did, so by learning from their losses and improving their defenses. The fact that multiple networks were now cooperating suggested their campaign was having significant impact. Are we compromised? Not directly, but they're getting smarter about operational security. The next phase will require more sophisticated approaches. Melissa pulled up a world map on her tablet, showing red pins marking known trafficking networks and blue pins indicating their successful operations. The visual was striking. They'd eliminated 17 major operations across 4 continents, but dozens of red pins remained. We need to evolve, Dale said, studying the map. Bigger operations, higher value targets, more significant disruption to their coordination efforts. Agreed. But that means greater risks and more exposure. Are you prepared for that level of escalation? Dale considered the question while watching Emma through the glass doors. She was 8 now, beautiful and brilliant, and completely trusting in her father's ability to protect her. The life they'd built was perfect in its way. Constant travel, unlimited resources, world-class education, and the satisfaction of meaningful work. But Emma wouldn't remain a child forever. Eventually, she would ask harder questions about their lifestyle, their resources, and the reasons for their security arrangements. Dale needed to ensure that when that day came, he could provide answers that wouldn't destroy her faith in the world. The Yamamoto Group in Tokyo, Dale said finally. What's their operational scope? Melissa swiped to a detailed intelligence report. Forced organ harvesting, primarily children. They maintain surgical facilities in Tokyo, Bangkok, and Manila. Annual revenue estimated at $50 million. Client base. Wealthy individuals needing transplants who can't or won't wait for legitimate donors. Politicians, celebrities, business leaders who've destroyed their organs through lifestyle choices and want discreet replacements. The images that accompanied the report were nauseating. Clinical photographs of surgical procedures performed on unwilling victims, financial records showing payments for specific organs, and video footage that confirmed the commercial nature of the operations. Eliminating Yamamoto wouldn't just save the immediate victims, Melissa continued. It would send a message to every other trafficking network that no operation is too large or well protected to be vulnerable. Dale closed the tablet, his decision made. Start planning. Full operational deployment, maximum impact, complete elimination of the network. That's not a small operation, Dale. Yamamoto has government protection, Yakuza connections, and international clients with their own security arrangements. We'll need a larger team and significant resources. Then we'll recruit a larger team and commit whatever resources are necessary. Melissa smiled with genuine admiration. You've changed since we started this partnership. 6 months ago, you were a businessman seeking revenge for a personal attack. Now you're becoming something much more dangerous. I'm becoming what Emma needs me to be. And what's that? Dale looked back at his daughter, who was now reading a book in 3 languages simultaneously, a skill that never failed to amaze him. A father who understands that protection requires more than just defensive measures. Sometimes you have to eliminate threats before they can develop. The Tokyo operation will establish us as a global force, Melissa said. After Yamamoto falls, every trafficking network in the world will know we exist and will be actively hunting us. Good. Let them hunt. It will make identifying and eliminating them much easier. As if sensing their conversation, Emma looked up from her book and waved at them through the glass. Her smile was radiant, innocent, and completely trusting. The smile of a child who believed her father could protect her from anything. Dale waved back, making a silent promise that her faith would never be disappointed. The world was full of monsters who preyed on children like Emma, but those monsters were about to discover that someone was hunting them with unlimited resources, military precision, and absolutely no mercy. The conversation was interrupted by Dale's secure phone. Corey Crane's voice carried unusual urgency. Boss, we've got a situation. Multiple intelligence agencies are starting to connect our operations. Someone leaked information about Prague, and they're building a pattern analysis. Which agencies? FBI, Interpol, and what looks like a joint task force including representatives from every country where we've operated. Dale felt the familiar tightening in his chest that preceded major tactical decisions. Discovery by law enforcement would complicate their operations, but wouldn't necessarily end them. Governments had their own reasons for wanting trafficking networks eliminated, even if they couldn't officially sanction the methods required. Assessment. Mixed. Some of them want to arrest us, others want to recruit us, and a few seem interested in just staying out of our way. The problem is coordination. They're starting to share information about our methods and targets. Dale made his decision with the same calm precision that had characterized every major choice in his life. Initiate Protocol 9. Full diplomatic engagement, complete transparency about our humanitarian objectives, and formal partnership offers for agencies that demonstrate appropriate cooperation. You want to legitimize the operation? I want to control it. Better to have governments as partners than as adversaries. After ending the call, Dale turned to Melissa, who had been listening with growing excitement. "You're not just eliminating trafficking networks," she said with admiration. "You're building something larger. An international coalition dedicated to protecting children through any means necessary." Emma deserves to grow up in a world where monsters are afraid of the consequences of their actions. And you're prepared to become the consequence? Dale looked out over the harbor, where yachts worth hundreds of millions of dollars floated peacefully in the evening light. In one of those vessels, he knew there were probably victims being transported or clients planning their next atrocity. The beautiful surface masked horrors that most people couldn't imagine. "I already am the consequence," he said quietly. "The question now is whether the world is ready for what comes next." Emma's laughter echoed from the music room as she discovered something amusing in her multilingual book. The sound was pure joy, unmarked by any knowledge of the darkness that surrounded their perfect life. Dale Matthews had begun this journey seeking revenge against two people who'd betrayed his family. Now he was becoming something unprecedented, a global force dedicated to protecting innocence through the systematic elimination of those who would destroy it. The architect's design had evolved far beyond his original blueprints. He was no longer just building security for his daughter. He was building a new world order where children like Emma could grow up safe, protected by a father who'd proven there were no limits to what he would sacrifice or whom he would destroy to keep them secure. The kingdom was complete, and Dale Matthews ruled it with absolute authority, unlimited resources, and the unshakable conviction that some evils could only be answered with overwhelming force. Emma was safe. The monsters were afraid, and the world was slowly becoming the place she deserved to inherit. The new kingdom had been built on blood and justice, and it would endure for as long as Dale Matthews drew breath to protect it. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful you've chosen to join us today. Tell us, which part of the world are you watching from? Big city? Small town? Country? We'd love to know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Hidden Hand. Victor Nolan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of Harmon Industries' 45th floor conference room, watching the sunset paint Manhattan's skyline in amber and gold. To the board members and executives filing out behind him, he was just another mid-level operations consultant, competent but unremarkable. None of them knew that Victor had single-handedly saved their latest acquisition from disaster last month through his network of international contacts, or that 3 patents critical to their flagship product bore his name under a pseudonym. Victor preferred it that way. For 7 years, he had operated in the shadows of Harmon Industries, becoming the company's problem solver while Gerald Harmon took the credit. The arrangement suited Victor perfectly. It gave him time to build his own ventures quietly while drawing a comfortable salary. "Great work on the Jensen merger," said Leo Merritt, tapping Victor's shoulder. Leo was one of the few who recognized Victor's true value to the company. "Gerald seems pleased," Victor replied, watching the CEO's retreating back. "He should be. That presentation you prepared saved us millions in negotiation. Though I noticed Philip was quick to jump in and take credit. Leo's voice carried a note of disapproval. Philip Harmon, Gerald's son and heir apparent, had joined the company just 18 months ago, fresh from business school with an inflated ego and mediocre talent. Victor had mostly avoided direct interaction with him, finding the young man's arrogance exhausting. Let him, Victor said with a shrug. Results matter more than recognition. As they walked to the elevator, Leo lowered his voice. Speaking of Philip, did you hear he's been spending a lot of time with Diana lately? Some charity thing they're both working on. Victor's expression remained neutral, though something cold settled in his chest. My wife has many projects. I can't keep track of them all. In truth, Victor had noticed Diana's increased absences over the past 3 months. She'd been distant, constantly checking her phone, making excuses to leave the house. 15 years of marriage had taught Victor to read the signs, but he had chosen to wait, observe, and gather information before confronting her. That evening, Victor arrived home to their Upper West Side apartment earlier than usual. The lights were on, but the place was silent. "Diana," he called, setting down his briefcase. No answer. Victor moved through the apartment with practiced quiet. In the bedroom, Diana's laptop sat open on her vanity. She never left it unlocked, except today she had. A rookie mistake. Victor sat down and began to read the open email thread. "Meet me at the usual place. 7 p.m. Philip." Victor didn't feel rage or pain, only a cold, detached curiosity as he scrolled through months of messages between his wife and his boss's son. The affair had been going on for nearly 6 months. What surprised Victor wasn't the betrayal itself, but how careless they'd become. He heard the front door open. "Victor, you're home early." Diana's voice carried a false brightness that now rang hollow to his ears. Victor closed the laptop and turned to face his wife as she entered the bedroom. Diana Nolan was still strikingly beautiful at 38, tall and elegant with chestnut hair and sharp green eyes. They had met when Victor was beginning his career, long before he had accumulated his hidden wealth and influence. "Plans for tonight?" Victor asked casually. Diana's hand flew instinctively to her neck, a nervous habit she'd never managed to break. "Just dinner with Melissa. The charity auction is next week, and we have so much to finalize." Victor smiled, noting how the lie came so easily to her. "Give her my regards." An hour later, after Diana had left for her dinner with Melissa, Victor made a single phone call to Raymond Frost, a former military intelligence officer turned private investigator who owed Victor several favors. "I need surveillance and documentation," Victor said simply. "Tonight, and for the foreseeable future." Raymond didn't ask questions. He never did. Victor opened a hidden safe in his home office and pulled out a leather-bound notebook. Inside were detailed contingency plans for various scenarios he might face in life. He flipped to the section labeled Betrayal and began to review his options. By morning, he would have photographic evidence of his wife's infidelity. By the end of the week, he would understand the full extent of her deception. And then, only then, would he decide exactly how their worlds would burn. Chapter 2. The Dismissal. For 2 weeks, Victor maintained his routine while accumulating evidence. Diana and Philip had been careless, meeting at a boutique hotel in Tribeca, exchanging unencrypted messages, and even being spotted at restaurants far from their usual haunts. Raymond Frost had compiled a comprehensive dossier that would have made intelligence agencies proud. Victor learned that Diana had accessed their joint savings account repeatedly, withdrawing nearly $50,000 over 6 months. Philip had convinced her that with her social connections and his business acumen, they could start their own venture, once they were free of their respective encumbrances. Victor was just one of those encumbrances. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Victor received an email from Human Resources requesting his presence. He knew what was coming before he even entered the sterile conference room, where Philip Harmon sat with Tessa Monroe, the HR director who looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Victor, please sit down," Philip said, his voice carrying the practiced gravity of someone playing a role they weren't suited for. At 32, Philip was handsome in a conventional way, Sandy hair, blue eyes, athletic build maintained by expensive personal trainers. Today he wore a tailored charcoal suit that Victor recognized as costing more than what most Harmon employees made in a month. "We've been conducting a comprehensive review of our operational structure," Philip began, not meeting Victor's eyes. "In the interest of streamlining our organization and optimizing efficiency, we've identified several positions that are redundant." Victor remained silent, watching Philip squirm slightly under his steady gaze. "Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately," Philip continued, gaining confidence from Victor's lack of reaction. "You'll receive 2 months severance, and Tessa will walk you through the exit process." "I see," Victor said, his voice betraying nothing. "Did your father approve this decision?" Philip's jaw tightened. "I don't need my father's approval for routine organizational adjustments. I'm the chief operations officer," a title Gerald had created specifically for his son, with responsibilities that remained ambiguous at best. "Was my performance unsatisfactory?" Victor asked, knowing full well his contributions had been essential to the company's recent successes. "It's not about performance," Philip said, a note of irritation creeping into his voice. "It's about structural optimization. We're moving in a different direction." Victor nodded slowly. "And what happens to the Jensen merger? The Seoul expansion?" Philip smiled, revealing perfect teeth that suggested extensive cosmetic work. "We have capable teams in place. No one is irreplaceable, Victor." The arrogance in Philip's tone confirmed what Victor already knew. This wasn't business. It was personal. Philip wanted him gone, and Diana had likely helped convince him it was necessary. Victor had seen the text messages suggesting as much. "You're right about that," Victor said, rising to his feet. "No one is irreplaceable." As Victor gathered his few personal items under Tessa's apologetic supervision, he made 3 calls from his personal phone. The first was to Vanessa Dyer, his contact at Morgan Stanley, who handled the financial backing for Harmon's expansion into Asian markets. The second was to Hiro Tanaka in Tokyo, who was leading the technology partnership that Gerald Harmon had been courting for over a year. The third was to Samuel Bishop, whose family's investment firm controlled a significant portion of Harmon Industries' financing. To each, Victor said only, "Hold all forward movement. I'll explain soon." As he was escorted from the building, Victor passed Leo in the hallway. His friend looked shocked. "What the hell happened?" Leo asked, falling into step beside him. "Philip decided I'm not essential," Victor replied calmly. "That's insane. Gerald can't have approved this." "Gerald isn't here. He's in Switzerland for the investor conference, remember?" Leo swore under his breath. "This is Philip's move while the old man is away. It has to be. What are you going to do?" Victor stopped at the elevator and turned to his friend. "I'm going to smile and say good luck. They're going to need it." Leo stared at him for a long moment. "There's something you're not telling me." "There's a lot I haven't told anyone," Victor admitted. "But you'll find out soon enough." As Victor walked out of Harmon Industries for the last time, he felt no anger, no resentment, only a sense of clarity. He had prepared for this contingency, just as he had prepared for many others. The rain had stopped, and the sun was breaking through the clouds as he hailed a cab. "Where to?" the driver asked. "The Waldorf Astoria," Victor replied. It was time to activate the contingency plan he'd been refining for years. By the time Gerald Harmon returned from Switzerland, his son's hasty decision would have set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. Chapter 3: The Revelation. Gerald Harmon's return from Switzerland coincided with the first tremors of disaster. The Korean technology partnership, a deal years in the making, had suddenly gone cold. Morgan Stanley had placed a hold on the financing for the Asian expansion, citing reassessment of market conditions. Most alarmingly, the Bishop family had requested an emergency meeting with the board to discuss their continued investment in Harmon Industries. Gerald Harmon was a man accustomed to control. At 68, he had built his company from a modest manufacturing operation into a global technology and logistics powerhouse. His silver hair and commanding presence had graced the covers of business magazines, and his reputation for shrewd decision-making was legendary. But today, as he stormed through the executive floor of Harmon Tower, he looked less like a titan of industry and more like a man watching his life's work crumble. "Where the hell is Philip?" he demanded of his assistant. "In the conference room with the executive team," she replied, her voice carefully neutral. When Gerald burst into the conference room, the heated discussion fell instantly silent. Philip sat at the head of the table, in Gerald's seat, looking significantly less confident than he had when firing Victor. "What the hell is happening?" Gerald demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've got Samuel Bishop threatening to pull out, Tanaka won't return my calls, and our stock is down 8% since the market opened." Philip stood, adjusting his tie nervously. "Dad, we're handling it. There's been some market volatility, but—" "Don't give me that NBA bullshit," Gerald snapped. "Something specific has spooked our partners. What have you done while I was away?" The room fell silent again. Executive Vice President Margot Wells finally spoke up. "There have been some organizational changes implemented last week." Gerald's eyes narrowed. "What changes?" Philip cleared his throat. "Nothing major. Just some streamlining to improve operational efficiency. We let Victor and Nolan go," Leo said bluntly from his position near the window. Gerald froze. "You did what?" "It was a redundancy elimination," Philip said quickly. His position was critical to everything we're doing in Asia." Gerald exploded. "Victor is the only one Tanaka trusts. He's the one who brought the Bishop family in last year when we needed capital." The color drained from Philip's face. "He was just an operations consultant." Gerald laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Is that what you thought?" He turned to address the entire room. "Victor Nolan has been the architect of our Asian strategy for years. He's the reason we have a foothold in Seoul at all. And you," he turned back to Philip, "fired him without consulting me." "I'm a COO," Philip said defensively. "It was an operational decision." "It was a catastrophic mistake," Gerald countered. "Get him back. Whatever it takes." Philip swallowed hard. "I've tried calling. He's not responding." Gerald's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Where is he?" "We don't know," Margot admitted. "He's not at his apartment. His wife says she hasn't seen him." Gerald pinched the bridge of his nose, visibly struggling to control his temper. "Leo, you're his friend. Find him." Leo nodded, but his expression suggested success was unlikely. "I'll try, but Victor can be elusive when he wants to be." As the meeting dissolved into crisis management, Leo slipped away and took the elevator to the lobby. Once outside, he walked 2 blocks before placing a call. "They're panicking," Leo said when the call connected. "Gerald just found out." "Right on schedule," Victor's voice replied calmly. "How's Philip holding up?" "Poorly." Gerald nearly took his head off in front of the entire executive team. "Diana's been calling the office looking for you." "Has she?" "Interesting. She hasn't tried my cell phone." Leo hesitated. "Victor, what exactly are you doing?" "Setting things right," Victor replied. "Come to the St. Regis tonight. Suite 1204. There's something I want to show you." That evening, as Leo entered the luxurious hotel suite, he found Victor calmly reviewing documents at a desk overlooking Central Park. The suite looked like a command center, with multiple laptops open and files meticulously arranged. "You've been busy," Leo observed. "I've been prepared," Victor corrected. "There's a difference." Leo accepted the whiskey Victor offered and settled into a chair. "Gerald wants you back. He's offering to double your salary, give you a seat on the board." Victor smiled thinly. "Too late. What exactly is your endgame here?" Victor gestured to a tablet displaying real-time stock information. Harman Industries had lost 12% of its value in a single day. "This is just the beginning." "Because Philip fired you? That seems disproportionate." "It's not about the firing," Victor said, sliding a file folder across the desk. "It's about why." Leo opened the folder, and his eyes widened as he saw the photographs of Philip and Diana together in various compromising situations. "Jesus, Victor. I had no idea." "If you did." "They thought they were being careful." Leo looked up from the photos. "Does Gerald know about this?" "Not yet, but he will, along with the rest of the board, when the time is right." "What's the right time?" Victor's expression hardened. "When I've dismantled everything Philip values. When Diana realizes exactly what she sacrificed." When Gerald understands the full scope of his son's incompetence, Leo studied his friend with new eyes. I've known you for 7 years. I thought I knew what you were capable of. Most people underestimate me, Victor said, his voice calm but edged with steel. It's an advantage I've cultivated. What do you need from me? Victor hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. There's going to be an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Gerald will try to salvage the Korean deal. I need you to make sure this information reaches the right people. He handed Leo a sealed envelope. What is it? The truth about Harman Industries' financial position. The real numbers, not the ones Philip has been presenting to the board. Leo's expression turned serious. That could tank the company completely. It could, Victor agreed, unless someone steps in with a solution. You? Victor smiled, a predator's smile that never reached his eyes. Not quite. You'll understand tomorrow. As Leo left the suite, he glanced back to see Victor standing by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, looking like a man who had calculated every move in a complex game. Meanwhile, across town, Diana Nolan sat in her darkened living room, staring at her phone. Victor had vanished without a trace. Their joint accounts had been frozen, and her calls to Philip had gone straight to voicemail since his disastrous meeting with Gerald. For the first time, Diana felt a cold flutter of fear as she realized she might have gravely underestimated her husband. Chapter 4. The Revelation. The emergency board meeting of Harman Industries began in chaos and descended from there. Samuel Bishop, patriarchal head of Bishop Investment Group, sat stone-faced as Gerald Harman attempted to reassure the board that the Korean technology partnership could be salvaged. Hiro Tanaka has agreed to take my call tomorrow, Gerald said, his confidence clearly forced. I believe we can get things back on track. That's not what my sources tell me, Samuel replied, his weathered face impassive. I'm hearing that Tanaka Industries has already entered preliminary discussions with Westridge Tech. A murmur rippled through the board members. Westridge was Harman's most aggressive competitor. That's impossible, Philip interjected. We have exclusivity agreements in place. Samuel Bishop fixed Philip with a cold stare. Those agreements were contingent on the personal involvement of specific individuals. Individuals who are no longer with the company, thanks to your streamlining. Before Philip could respond, the boardroom door opened and Leo Merritt entered, apologizing for his tardiness. As he took his seat, he discreetly slid folders to several key board members, including Samuel Bishop. What is this? Gerald demanded as Samuel opened his folder. The old investor's eyebrows rose as he scanned the contents. It appears to be an accurate financial assessment of Harman Industries, significantly different from the reports we've been receiving. Philip blanched. That's confidential internal information. Where did this come from? All eyes turned to Leo, who simply shrugged. I'm just a messenger. Samuel Bishop rose slowly to his feet. Gerald, we've done business for 30 years. I've trusted your judgment, even when I questioned your decision to install your son in a position he clearly wasn't ready for. He held up the financial report. But this level of misrepresentation crosses a line. I don't know what you're looking at, Gerald said, his voice tight. But I assure you, our financial reporting is fraudulent, Samuel finished flatly. Or, at the very least, creatively misleading. The Bishops will be reconsidering our position in Harman Industries. As if on cue, phones around the table began to buzz with notifications. The company's stock had dropped another 15% in the first hour of trading. This is absurd, Philip sputtered. We can explain the discrepancies. It's simply a matter of accounting methodology. Samuel Bishop's laugh was devoid of humor. Son, I was analyzing balance sheets before you were born. This isn't methodology. This is deception. He turned to Gerald. You have until the end of the week to present a viable recovery plan, or we pull our financing. As the meeting dissolved into heated arguments, Leo slipped out and placed a call from the hallway. It's done, he said quietly. Bishop dropped your bomb exactly as you predicted. Perfect, Victor replied. Phase 1 complete. Are you ready for Phase 2? Just tell me what you need. Across town, Diana Nolan was growing desperate. Her credit cards had been declined at Bergdorf Goodman, a humiliation she hadn't experienced since college. The apartment's utilities had been mysteriously transferred out of their joint name, and her key card no longer worked at her fitness club. Where her phone rang displaying Philip's number, she snatched it up. Finally, where have you been? Damage control. Philip's voice was tight with stress. Your husband has apparently decided to burn everything down on his way out. What do you mean? I mean, he's systematically destroying Harmon Industries. The company's lost nearly 30% of its value in 2 days. My father is on the verge of a coronary, and the board is talking about emergency leadership changes. Diana felt her stomach tighten. But how could Victor do any of that? He was just a consultant. Philip's bitter laugh echoed through the phone. Apparently not. According to my father, Victor has been the hidden genius behind half our major initiatives for years. He has relationships with our investors, our partners, relationships I knew nothing about. That's impossible, Diana whispered, though a cold feeling was spreading through her chest. Victor never mentioned any of this. Well, he certainly didn't mention it to me before I fired him, Philip snapped. Did you know he speaks fluent Korean? That he personally negotiated the technology transfer agreements with Tanaka? That he's been his soul 12 times in the past 3 years? Diana sank onto the couch, her mind racing. The business trips Victor had taken, the late-night calls he claimed were to international offices, the casual way he'd mentioned meeting with overseas executives. She had never paid attention, too absorbed in her social life, and, recently, her affair with Philip. We need to find him, she said finally. Make him stop whatever he's doing. Don't you think I've tried? He's disappeared. My father's offering him anything he wants to come back, but he won't even take the calls. What about us? Diana asked, her voice small. What happens to our plans? Philip's silence told her everything she needed to know. Philip, I need to focus on saving the company right now, he said finally. My father is talking about removing me as COO. Everything's falling apart. So, you're abandoning me? Diana felt panic rising. After I risked everything, I'm not abandoning you, Philip said, but his tone lacked conviction. I just need time to fix this mess. We can't be seen together right now, anyway. It would only make things worse if people knew about us. After Philip hung up, Diana sat in stunned silence. The life she had so carefully planned, divorcing Victor, starting fresh with Philip, launching their new venture with the money she'd been siphoning from their accounts, was evaporating before her eyes. Her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. Plaza Hotel, Oak Room Bar, 8 p.m. Come alone if you want answers. V. Diana stared at the message, her heart pounding. After 7 days of silence, Victor was finally reaching out, but on his terms, not hers. At precisely 8 p.m., Diana entered the Oak Room Bar at the Plaza Hotel, scanning the dimly lit space for her husband. She spotted him at a corner table, looking remarkably composed in a tailored suit she didn't recognize. As she approached, she noticed the subtle changes in his appearance, his posture more commanding, his expression unreadable. Hello, Diana, Victor said, not rising as she took the seat across from him. You look tired. Where have you been? She demanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. Why haven't you answered my calls? I've been busy, he replied, taking a sip of his whiskey. Reorganizing, much like what Philip did at Harmon Industries. Victor, I don't know what you think is happening, but please, he interrupted, his voice soft but with an edge that made her flinch. Let's not insult each other with lies. I know about your affair with Philip. I know about the money you've been stealing from our accounts. I know about your plans to leave once you'd secured your position through Philip's new venture. Diana felt the blood drain from her face. Ow! Victor smiled thinly. I've always been more observant than you gave me credit for. Is that why you're destroying Harmon Industries? Some kind of twisted revenge? I'm not destroying anything, Victor said calmly. I'm simply withdrawing my support. There's a difference. What do you want from me? Diana asked, her voice barely audible. Victor leaned forward, his eyes cold. Nothing. Not anymore. I wanted to meet so you would understand exactly what's happening. You chose Philip because you thought he offered you a better future, wealth, status, excitement. But you backed the wrong horse, Diana. It wasn't like that, she protested weakly. It was exactly like that, Victor countered. And now you're going to watch as everything you thought you were gaining crumbles to dust. Philip will be removed as COO by the end of the week. His reputation in the industry will be unsalvageable, and you'll be left with nothing. No husband, no lover, no money, no future. Diana felt tears threatening. You can't do this. I already have. Victor stood, buttoning his jacket. Our marriage is over. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce. Don't bother looking for the money you stole. It's gone. Consider yourself lucky that I'm not pressing charges for financial fraud. Victor, please. Diana reached for his arm, but he stepped back, avoiding her touch. We could talk about this. 15 years of marriage deserves more than this. You should have thought of that before you decided to throw those years away. Victor replied, his voice devoid of emotion. Goodbye, Diana. As Victor walked away, Diana remained frozen in her seat, the full impact of her miscalculation washing over her. She had gambled everything on Philip Harmon, never suspecting that the quiet, unassuming husband she had grown to dismiss was actually holding all the cards. Chapter 5. The Count to Move. Gerald Harmon had aged a decade in a week. The company he had built over 40 years was in free fall, the stock price plummeting, partners backing out of deals, and the Bishop family publicly questioning the leadership's integrity. Worst of all, his son, the heir he had groomed to take over, had triggered the cascade of disasters with a single, stupid decision. Tell me again why you fired Victor Nolan, Gerald demanded, pacing his office while Philip sat miserably in a visitor's chair. I told you. It was a restructuring decision, Philip insisted, though his confidence had evaporated days ago. We needed to streamline operations. Bullshit, Gerald snapped. Leo Merritt says you've had it in for Victor for months. Said you felt threatened by him. Philip shifted uncomfortably. That's ridiculous. Why would I feel threatened by a mid-level consultant? Gerald stopped pacing and fixed his son with a hard stare. Because you knew he was more than that. Because despite my efforts to shield you, you realized Victor was the real brains behind our recent successes. Dad, that's not. Or was it something else? Gerald interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. Something more personal? Philip froze, his expression confirming Gerald's suspicions. Jesus Christ, Gerald sank into his chair. Tell me you didn't fire a critical employee because of a woman. Philip remained silent, his face flushed with shame. Gerald rubbed his temples, feeling the headache that had become his constant companion. Who is she? It doesn't matter, Philip muttered. It matters if it's costing me my company. Gerald shouted, slamming his fist on the desk. Who is she, Philip? The office door opened before Philip could respond, and Leo entered without knocking. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you need to see immediately. He placed a tablet on Gerald's desk, displaying a financial news website. The headline read, Korean tech giant Tanaka Industries announces partnership with Novice Capital. What the hell is Novice Capital? Gerald demanded. A new player, Leo replied. Incorporated in Delaware 3 years ago, privately held. They just announced they're acquiring the technology patents that Tanaka was going to license to us. 3 years. Gerald looked up sharply. Who's behind it? Leo's expression was grim. The CEO is listed as Raymond Frost. The primary shareholder is a holding company registered in the Cayman Islands. But my sources tell me the real power behind Novice is Victor Nolan. Gerald stared at the tablet in disbelief. Victor has been planning this for 3 years. Not exactly, Leo explained. For what I understand, Novice was his contingency plan. Insurance, if you will. He's been building it quietly, patenting his own innovations instead of turning them all over to Harmon. Philip had gone pale. Are you saying he's been working against us this whole time? No. Leo's voice hardened as he looked at Philip. He was loyal to Harmon Industries until you gave him reason not to be. You fired him, remember? On the same day, he discovered his wife was sleeping with you. The office fell silent as Gerald slowly turned to his son, his expression a mixture of shock and disgust. Diana Nolan, you've been having an affair with Victor's wife. Philip couldn't meet his father's eyes. Dad, I can explain. Get out, Gerald whispered, his voice shaking with rage. Get out of my office. Get out of my building. Dad, you're suspended, effective immediately, Gerald said, standing. I'll deal with you later. Right now, I need to salvage what's left of this company. After Philip slunk from the office, Gerald turned to Leo. How bad is it? Worse than you think, Leo admitted. The Bishop family has formally announced they're divesting from Harmon. 3 board members have called for your resignation. And now Tanaka has partnered with Victor's company instead of ours. Gerald slumped in his chair. He's destroying everything. He's not destroying anything, Leo corrected. He's building something new from the opportunities you created by letting Philip drive him away. What does he want? Gerald asked, suddenly looking every day of his 68 years. Money? Power? Control of Harmon. I think he wants justice, Leo said simply. And I'm not sure there's anything you can offer that would change his course now. Across town, in the temporary headquarters of Novice Capital, Victor was reviewing the press coverage of the Tanaka partnership announcement with satisfaction. Beside him stood Vanessa Dyer, formerly of Morgan Stanley, now Novice's chief financial officer. Harmon stock dropped another 20% today, Vanessa reported. They're on the verge of a total collapse. And the Bishop family? Samuel is fully divested. He's expressed interest in investing in Novice instead. Victor nodded thoughtfully. Schedule a meeting. We could use his connections. Raymond Frost entered the conference room, looking incongruous in a business suit instead of his usual nondescript attire. As the public face of Novice, he had been thrust into the spotlight, a role the former intelligence officer found uncomfortable but was managing admirably. The Seoul office called, Raymond reported. Hiro Tanaka wants to accelerate the timeline on the joint venture. He's impressed with how quickly we've moved. Tell him we'll accommodate, Victor replied. And what about our other matter? Raymond's expression turned grim. Philip Harmon has been suspended from Harmon Industries. He's holed up in his penthouse, not taking calls. Diana has been trying to reach him without success. And the documentation I asked for? All here. Raymond placed a thick folder on the table. Bank records, text messages, emails. Everything proving their conspiracy to defraud you and embezzle company resources. Victor examined the evidence with clinical detachment. Perfect. Have copies sent to Gerald Harmon and the board. Vanessa looked concerned. Are you sure? This could be the final nail in Harmon Industries' coffin. Gerald deserves to know exactly who his son is, Victor said firmly. What he does with that information is his choice. As his team dispersed to execute his instructions, Victor moved to the window overlooking the city. In just 10 days, he had transformed from an overlooked consultant to the architect of a new corporate power. Novice Capital was emerging from the shadows, built on the relationships and innovations he had cultivated for years while working in Gerald Harmon's shadow. His phone rang, a number he recognized immediately. Hello, Gerald, he answered calmly. I've been expecting your call. What will it take? Gerald's voice was weary, defeated. Name your price. You assume this is about money, Victor replied. Isn't everything in the end? Not for me. Victor's voice hardened. This is about respect, recognition, justice. I always respected you, Gerald protested. You were vital to Harmon. Yet you allowed your son to fire me without consultation. You let him take credit for my work for years. Gerald sighed heavily. I was wrong. I admit that. But don't punish the entire company, hundreds of innocent employees, for my mistakes. I'm not punishing anyone, Victor said coolly. I'm competing. That's business, Gerald. You taught me that. What if I offered you control? A merger between Harmon and Novice, with you as CEO? Victor laughed softly. Too late. I already have everything I need. Then why take this call at all? Gerald asked, frustration evident in his voice. Victor paused, considering the question. Because despite everything, I respected you once. You built something impressive, Gerald. It's a shame your blind spot for Philip destroyed it. He's my son, Gerald said simply. Yes, Victor agreed. That was always his only qualification. After ending the call, Victor returned to the conference table where a stack of documents awaited his signature. The future of Novice Capital was unfolding exactly as he had planned, rising from the ashes of his former life. Meanwhile, Diana Nolan sat alone in an empty apartment, staring at an eviction notice. Her calls to Philip remained unanswered. Her credit cards were maxed out, and the reality of her new circumstances was finally sinking in. She had gambled everything on Philip Harmon and lost spectacularly. Her phone rang, a familiar number that she had been calling without success for days. "Philip," she answered desperately. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you." "It's over, Diana." Philip's voice was cold, distant. "My father knows everything. I've been suspended. The company is imploding." "What are we going to do?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. Philip laughed bitterly. "There is no we anymore. I'm trying to salvage what's left of my career." "But we had plans," Diana protested. "The new venture, the future we talked about." "Wake up, Diana," Philip snapped. "Those plans depended on my position at Harmon, which is gone now, thanks to your husband." "He was never supposed to find out," Diana whispered. "Well, he did, and he's systematically destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my future. I have to focus on damage control." "What about me?" Diana's voice broke. "I have nothing left." Philip's silence spoke volumes. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry, Diana. I can't help you anymore." The line went dead, leaving Diana staring at her phone in disbelief. In less than 2 weeks, her carefully constructed life had completely unraveled, leaving her alone with the consequences of her betrayal. Chapter 6. The Consolidation. 1 month after Victor Nolan's dismissal from Harmon Industries, the business world was still reeling from the meteoric rise of Novice Capital. What had appeared to be an overnight success was revealed to be the result of years of careful planning and strategic positioning. Financial analysts were discovering that Victor had been quietly filing patents, cultivating relationships, and building a shadow organization while still employed at Harmon. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature titled "The Invisible Architect," detailing how Victor had operated as the hidden genius behind Harmon's most successful initiatives while simultaneously laying the groundwork for his own empire. Business schools were already developing case studies on what some were calling the most elegant corporate revenge in modern history. In the gleaming new offices of Novice Capital, Victor reviewed the final acquisition papers with his legal team. Harmon Industries, or what remained of it, was being sold to a consortium led by Novice. The once mighty corporation had been reduced to a shell of its former self, its stock price decimated, its major partners defected, its leadership in disarray. "The board has approved the terms," Victor's general counsel confirmed. "Gerald Harmon has agreed to step down as CEO, effective immediately." "And Philip?" Victor asked. "Resigned 3 weeks ago. According to our sources, he's left the country, possibly Singapore or Malaysia." Victor nodded, unsurprised. Philip had always been a coward at heart, running from consequences rather than facing them. "What about the employees?" Victor asked. As instructed, all rank-and-file employees will be offered positions with novice or generous severance packages. The executive team, however, will need to reapply if they want to stay, Victor finished. With the exception of Leo Merritt, who becomes our new chief strategy officer. Leo, who had been reviewing documents nearby, looked up with a smile, already accepting the position before offering it. "Was there any doubt?" Victor replied. As the legal team departed, Leo poured 2 glasses of scotch and handed one to Victor. "To success," he said, raising his glass. Victor clinked glasses but didn't drink immediately. "It doesn't feel like success yet." "You've accomplished everything you set out to do," Leo pointed out. "Harmon is yours. Philip is disgraced and on the run. Gerald has been humbled. What more could you want?" "Closure," Victor said simply. Leo studied his friend carefully. "And Diana? Have you heard from her?" "My lawyer has. She's contesting the divorce terms." "After everything she did?" Victor's expression hardened. "She never understood who I really was. Even now, she thinks she can manipulate the situation. Will she get anything?" "The law entitles her to certain considerations," Victor acknowledged, "but nothing close to what she expected." Leo hesitated, then asked the question that had been on his mind for weeks. "Was any of it real? Your marriage?" Victor stared into his glass, momentarily lost in thought. "I loved her once, or thought I did. Perhaps I was just in love with the idea of a normal life. The successful executive, the beautiful wife, the perfect home. And now I see it for what it was, a cover story. A distraction from what I was really building. Leo nodded thoughtfully. And Gerald? Will you meet with him before the acquisition is finalized? Yes, Victor said, his expression unreadable. He's requested a private meeting tomorrow. One last conversation before the torch passes officially. The following day, Victor arrived at Gerald Harmon's penthouse overlooking Central Park. The once imposing business titan looked diminished somehow, sitting in his leather chair with a tumbler of bourbon at 10 in the morning. Victor, Gerald nodded in greeting. Thank you for coming. You said it was important, Victor replied, remaining standing. Gerald gestured to a chair. Please, this won't take long. Victor sat, his posture relaxed but alert. I wanted to see you face to face, Gerald began, before the acquisition is complete. To understand something. What's that? Was this always your plan? To take everything from me? Victor considered the question carefully. No, my plan was to work for you, learn from you, and eventually build something of my own. Taking Harmon was never the objective. Then why? Because your son made it personal, Victor said simply. He crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Gerald nodded slowly. Philip has always been impulsive, entitled. I spoiled him after his mother died. Tried to give him everything, including a company he couldn't run. Gerald didn't deny it. I wanted to believe he could grow into the role. That belief cost you everything. Not everything, Gerald corrected. I still have my name, my reputation damaged as it is. And I still have the knowledge that I built something significant, even if I couldn't sustain it. Victor inclined his head, acknowledging the point. What will you do with Harmon? Gerald asked. Dismantle it completely? No, Victor replied. The acquisition isn't about destruction. It's about integration. Harmon built the foundation. Novice will build the future. Gerald studied him for a long moment. You know, in many ways, you're the son I wish I'd had. Victor's expression remained impassive. We both know that's not true. You always chose Philip, regardless of his failings. Because he was my blood, Gerald admitted. My legacy. Some legacies aren't worth preserving. Gerald flinched at the harshness of the statement, but didn't argue. What will happen to him now? That depends on Philip, Victor said coolly. If he stays gone, nothing. If he returns and keeps his distance, nothing. If he attempts to interfere with my business or my life in any way. He left the threat unspoken. Gerald nodded, understanding the terms. And Diana? She made her choice. Victor's voice hardened. She chose poorly. Marriages end every day, Gerald observed. Was all this really necessary because my son had an affair with your wife? This wasn't about the affair, Victor clarified. It was about respect, about consequences. Your son thought he could take what was mine, my position, my wife, my dignity, without consequences. He needed to learn that actions have costs. An expensive lesson, Gerald murmured. The most valuable ones usually are. Gerald finished his bourbon and set the glass down with finality. I hope it was worth it, Victor. I hope when the dust settles and you're sitting in my chair, running what used to be my company, you find it satisfying. Victor stood, buttoning his jacket. It's not about satisfaction, Gerald. It's about justice, fairness, balance. The scales needed to be evened. And are they now? Gerald asked, looking suddenly old and tired. Victor considered the question. Almost. As he left Gerald Harmon's penthouse for the last time, Victor felt neither triumph nor regret. The acquisition of Harmon Industries was simply the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. The real work, building Novice Capital into the company he had always envisioned, was just beginning. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. 6 months after the acquisition of Harmon Industries, Novice Capital had emerged as one of the most dynamic companies in the technology sector. Under Victor's leadership, the integrated organization had secured the Korean partnerships, expanded into emerging markets, and launched innovations that had competitors scrambling to catch up. The business press had dubbed Victor the Shadow CEO, highlighting how he had operated behind the scenes for years before emerging into the spotlight. A profile on Forbes called him the most brilliant executive no one knew about until it was too late. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Victor was reviewing quarterly projections with his executive team when his assistant interrupted with an urgent message. "Sir, Philip Harmon is in the lobby. He's demanding to see you." The room fell silent. Everyone present knew the history between Victor and Gerald Harmon's disgraced son. "How interesting," Victor said, his voice betraying no emotion. "Is he alone?" "Yes, sir. Security has detained him, but he's causing quite a scene." Victor considered for a moment. "Have security bring him to conference room 3. I'll meet him there." After dismissing the meeting, Victor walked unhurriedly to the conference room, where he found Philip pacing nervously. 6 months of exile had not been kind to the younger Harmon. His tailored suits had been replaced by casual, where that hung loosely on his frame, and his once confident demeanor had given way to a twitchy anxiety. "Philip," Victor greeted him coolly. "This is unexpected." Philip stopped pacing, his expression a mixture of desperation and resentment. "I need to talk to you." "About?" "You know damn well what about," Philip snapped. "You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my future, all gone because of you." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Because of me? Interesting perspective." "You set me up," Philip accused. "You manipulated everything from the beginning." "Did I force you to have an affair with my wife?" Victor asked calmly. "Did I compel you to fire me without cause? Did I make you lie to your father and the board about the company's finances?" Philip's face flushed with anger. "You were building a competing company while working for my father. You're the one who betrayed us." "I was creating a contingency plan," Victor corrected. "Insurance against precisely the kind of betrayal you eventually carried out." "You think you're so clever," Philip snarled. "You've stolen my father's company, turned everyone against me, even Diana." "Ah yes, Diana," Victor interrupted, his voice hardening. "How is my ex-wife? Still calling you, begging for help? Or has she finally accepted that you abandoned her when things got difficult?" Philip looked away, confirming Victor's suspicions. "You didn't just betray me, Philip," Victor continued. "You betrayed her too. You made promises you never intended to keep. You used her, just as you tried to use me." "I loved her," Philip protested weakly. "No," Victor shook his head. "You loved the idea of taking something that belonged to someone else. You never cared about Diana as a person." Philip slumped into a chair, the fight draining out of him. "What do you want from me? I've lost everything. Isn't that enough?" "I don't want anything from you," Victor replied honestly. "You're here because you want something from me." Philip looked up, his expression confirming Victor's assessment. "Money," Victor guessed. "You've burned through whatever you had saved. Your father has cut you off. Now you're desperate." "I need a fresh start," Philip admitted. "Somewhere far from here, where people don't know about." He trailed off. "Your spectacular failure," Victor finished for him. "Your betrayal of your father, your company, and everyone who trusted you." Philip flinched but didn't deny it. Victor studied the broken man before him, feeling neither satisfaction nor pity. "Why should I help you?" "Because you've won," Philip said, his voice barely audible. "You've taken everything. What's a little money to you now?" Victor laughed softly. "That's your pitch. You've beaten me, so be generous? You haven't learned anything, have you?" Philip's expression hardened. "Fine. Then how about this? Help me, or I'll go public with everything I know about how you operated at Harmon. How you were secretly building Navas while taking a salary from my father. Blackmail now." Victor's voice was dangerously quiet. "You really are desperate." "I've got nothing left to lose," Philip said, a note of defiance returning to his voice. Victor reached into his jacket and removed a small recorder, placing it on the table between them. "That's where you're wrong. You have your freedom to lose." Philip stared at the device. "What is that?" "Evidence," Victor replied simply, "of conspiracy, corporate espionage, fraud, and embezzlement. Your conversations with Diana planning to steal company resources. Your attempts to access protected intellectual property. I've had it all documented for months." The color drained from Philip's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Raymond Frost is very thorough." Former intelligence officer, you know. He has a talent for surveillance. Philip swallowed hard. What are you going to do? That depends on you, Victor said, leaning forward. Walk away now. Leave New York. Never contact me, Diana, or anyone associated with Novice Capital again. Do that, and these recordings remain private. And if I don't, then the FBI receives evidence of multiple federal crimes committed by Philip Harmon. I imagine they'd be very interested, given the scale of financial losses involved. Philip stared at Victor, finally seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time, not as the unassuming consultant he'd dismissed, but as the calculating strategist who had orchestrated his downfall with precision. You've been planning this all along, Philip whispered. No, Victor corrected. I prepared for it. There's a difference. Philip stood on shaky legs. This isn't over. It is, Victor stated firmly. Unless you want to spend the next decade in federal prison. Make your choice. After Philip had been escorted from the building, Leo found Victor standing by the window of his office, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Philip Harmon paid you a visit, Leo observed. Anything I should be concerned about? No, Victor replied. He won't be a problem anymore. Leo studied his friend carefully. Did that give you what you needed? The confrontation? Victor turned from the window. Partially. There's still one conversation left to have. Diana. Victor nodded. She's been trying to delay the divorce proceedings, using every legal maneuver her new attorney can think of. Why bother? Leo asked. The prenuptial agreement is solid. It's not about money anymore, Victor explained. It's about control. She can't accept that she miscalculated so completely. Will you meet with her? Victor checked his watch. In an hour. One final conversation to close this chapter permanently. Diana Nolan had once been the elegant wife of a successful executive. Now, as she sat in the upscale restaurant waiting for Victor, she looked like a woman struggling to maintain the appearance of her former life. Her designer clothes were from last season. Her jewelry less impressive than before. Her smile strained when Victor finally appeared at the table. Thank you for meeting me, she said as he sat down across from her. Victor said nothing, simply studying her with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen. Diana shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. I've been trying to reach you. Through your lawyers, Victor noted, attempting to contest the prenuptial agreement you willingly signed. Victor, this has gone too far, Diana said, leaning forward. We were married for 15 years. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for everything, Victor replied evenly, until you decided it didn't. People make mistakes. Diana's voice softened, taking on the persuasive tone she had used successfully throughout their marriage. I made a terrible mistake with Philip. I see that now. You see it now because he abandoned you when things became difficult, Victor observed. Not because you regret betraying me. Diana flinched at the accuracy of his assessment. Can't we at least discuss a more equitable settlement? The prenup was signed under different circumstances. Yes, Victor agreed. When you thought I was just a mid-level executive with modest savings and a good salary. When you had no idea what I was actually building. That's not fair, Diana protested. You never told me about Novice, about the patents, about any of it. And would it have mattered? Victor asked, genuinely curious. If you had known I was worth millions, would you have stayed faithful? Diana's hesitation was answer enough. That's what I thought, Victor said quietly. You didn't betray me because you fell in love with Philip. You betrayed me because you thought he offered a better return on investment. That's a terrible thing to say, Diana whispered, tears forming in her eyes. But accurate, Victor countered. You viewed our marriage as a transaction. When you thought Philip offered better terms, you switched allegiances without hesitation. Diana wiped away a tear. What do you want from me, Victor? Nothing, he said simply. I arranged this meeting because I wanted you to understand something. The divorce will proceed according to the terms of the prenuptial agreement. No negotiations, no extensions, no further delays. And if I fight it, Victor's expression hardened. Then I'll release evidence of your conspiracy with Philip to defraud me and embezzle funds. The criminal charges would be significant. Diana stared at him, seeing a side of her husband she had never recognized during their marriage. "Who are you?" she asked finally. "I don't even know you anymore." "You never did," Victor replied, rising from the table. That was the problem. As he walked away, leaving Diana alone with the remains of a life she had discarded too easily, Victor felt the last piece of his old identity falling away. The man who had played the role of unassuming husband and overlooked executive no longer existed. In his place stood the architect of a new empire, built from the ruins of betrayal and miscalculation. Chapter 8. The Legacy. 1 year after the acquisition of Harmon Industries, Novice Capital celebrated its official public launch with a gala event at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The business elite of New York gathered to witness what the Wall Street Journal had called the most anticipated corporate debut of the decade. Victor Nolan, now firmly established as one of the most powerful executives in the technology sector, moved through the crowd with easy confidence. The company he had quietly built while working in Gerald Harmon's shadow was now valued at over $20 billion, with partnerships spanning 5 continents and innovations that were redefining multiple industries. "Quite a turnout," Leo observed, joining Victor near a display of ancient Greek artifacts. "Half of Wall Street is here, plus tech royalty from both coasts." "And you're surprised?" Victor asked with a slight smile. "Not surprised," Leo corrected. "Impressed. A year ago, most of these people had never heard of Novice Capital. Now, they're falling over themselves to be associated with it." Victor sipped his champagne, surveying the room with calculated detachment. People are drawn to success. They want to be near it, hoping some of it might rub off on them. "Speaking of which," Leo nodded toward the entrance, "look who just arrived." Gerald Harmon stood in the doorway, looking distinguished but diminished somehow. At Victor's invitation, the former CEO had joined Novice's advisory board 6 months earlier, a position with prestige but no actual power. "Should I rescue him from the vultures?" Leo asked as reporters began to converge on Gerald. "Give him a moment," Victor replied. Gerald has always enjoyed the spotlight. As they watched, Gerald fielded questions with practiced ease, praising Victor's leadership and Novice's innovations without a hint of the bitterness that might have been expected. "He's adapted well," Leo noted, "considering everything." "Gerald is a survivor," Victor said with grudging respect. "Always has been." Later in the evening, as the event reached its peak, Victor found himself momentarily alone on the museum's balcony, enjoying a rare moment of solitude. The sound of footsteps alerted him to someone's approach. "Quite a triumph," Gerald Harmon said, joining him at the railing. "You should be proud." Victor inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I am. You know, I've been thinking about our last private conversation," Gerald continued. "When I asked if it was worth it, I remember. You didn't really answer then," Gerald observed. "I wonder if you could now, with a year's perspective." Victor considered the question carefully. "Yes," he said finally. "It was worth it." "Because you won?" Gerald pressed. "Because you took everything?" "No," Victor shook his head. "Because justice was served. Balance was restored." Gerald laughed softly. "You're a philosopher as well as a businessman." "The two aren't mutually exclusive." They stood in silence for a moment, looking out over the city lights. "Have you heard from Philip?" Victor asked eventually. Gerald's expression tightened. "He's in Singapore. Started some small consulting firm. He calls occasionally, usually when he needs money." "And do you provide it?" "He's still my son," Gerald said simply. "Despite everything." Victor nodded, understanding the obligation even if he didn't share it. "And Diana?" Gerald asked. "The divorce was finalized, I understand." "Yes," Victor confirmed. "She received exactly what the prenuptial agreement specified. No more, no less." "Was she surprised by that outcome?" "She was surprised by many things," Victor said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Mostly by the discovery that I wasn't who she thought I was." Gerald studied him thoughtfully. "You know, in all our years working together, I never really knew you either. I saw what you allowed me to see. The competent, unassuming executive who solved problems and never sought the spotlight. That was by design," Victor admitted. "And now," Gerald gestured toward the gala inside, "you seem comfortable with attention." "It serves a purpose," Victor explained. The company needs a visible leader, a persona for the public and the markets to connect with. Just another role you're playing, Gerald observed. I wonder if anyone truly knows the real Victor Nolan. Victor smiled enigmatically. Perhaps not. Does anyone truly know anyone else? Before Gerald could respond, they were interrupted by Vanessa Dyer, now a Novice's CFO. Sorry to intrude, she said, but the Japanese delegation has arrived, and they're asking for you specifically, Victor. Duty calls, Victor said to Gerald, straightening his jacket. If you'll excuse me. Gerald nodded, watching as Victor transformed seamlessly from philosophical conversationalist to commanding CEO, greeting the Japanese executives with perfect etiquette and flawless language skills. As the gala continued into the night, celebrating Novice Capital's meteoric rise, Victor moved through the crowd with deliberate purpose, every interaction carefully calculated to strengthen his company's position. The man who had once operated in the shadows now commanded the spotlight, not because he craved attention, but because it served his greater vision. Later that night, long after the last guest had departed, Victor returned to his penthouse overlooking Central Park. The space was minimalist and modern, reflecting his preference for clarity and purpose over ostentation. Unlike the home he had shared with Diana, this space contained nothing superfluous, nothing that wasn't functional or meaningful. As he poured himself a glass of whiskey, Victor reflected on Gerald's question about worth and cost. The past 18 months had transformed his life completely, from underestimated executive to industry titan, from betrayed husband to solitary architect of a new empire. Had been worth it? The question lingered as Victor moved to the window, looking out at the city he had conquered. The answer wasn't in the wealth he had accumulated or the power he now wielded. It was in the fundamental balance that had been restored. Those who had betrayed him had faced consequences proportionate to their actions. Those who had remained loyal had been rewarded accordingly. Justice, not revenge, had been his primary motivation, though the line between the two could admittedly blur at times. Victor had always understood that distinction, even if others couldn't see it. His phone chimed with a message from Leo. Tokyo deal confirmed. We got everything we wanted. Victor smiled slightly. The future was unfolding according to plan. Novice Capital was positioned to redefine multiple industries, with innovations that would cement Victor's legacy far beyond the personal drama that had catalyzed his emergence from the shadows. The architect had completed his masterwork, not of ruin as his enemies had feared, but of creation, a new empire built from the ashes of betrayal and miscalculation. Chapter 9. The Resolution. 5 years after the fall of Harman Industries and the rise of Novice Capital, Victor Nolan had become a legend in business circles, the shadowy genius who had engineered one of the most remarkable corporate ascensions in modern history. Novice had expanded globally, with offices in 12 countries and innovations that had disrupted multiple industries. On a crisp autumn morning, Victor sat in his private office reviewing the final details of Novice's latest acquisition when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Sir, Diana Nolan is here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent. Victor paused, momentarily surprised. He hadn't seen or spoken to his ex-wife since their final meeting 5 years earlier. Send her in. Diana entered the office with a fraction of her former confidence. She was still attractive at 43, but the years had not been as kind to her as they might have been. Her designer clothes were tasteful but not current, her jewelry modest compared to what she had once worn. Victor, she said, her voice softer than he remembered. Thank you for seeing me. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. What brings you here after all this time? Diana sat, placing her handbag carefully in her lap. I'm moving to Chicago next month. I wanted to clear the air before I left New York. There's nothing to clear, Victor replied evenly. Our business was concluded years ago. Not our legal business, Diana clarified. Our personal business. The things left unsaid. Victor leaned back, studying her with detached curiosity. Such as, Diana took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize. For everything. Not because I want anything from you, she added quickly, seeing his skeptical expression, but because I need to say it for my own peace of mind. An interesting development, Victor observed. What prompted this sudden need for closure? It wasn't sudden, Diana admitted. It's been building for years. Watching you succeed, while Philip and I... She trailed off. While you faced the consequences of your choices, Victor finished for her. Diana nodded, accepting the harsh truth. Yes, exactly that. And Philip, Victor asked, how is he faring these days? I wouldn't know, Diana said with a touch of bitterness. He cut off all contact, once it became clear I couldn't help him anymore. Last I heard, he was in Hong Kong, trying to rebuild some semblance of a career. Victor wasn't surprised. Philip had always been fundamentally weak, abandoning ship at the first sign of trouble. And you? He asked, more out of politeness than genuine interest. Chicago represents a fresh start. Something like that, Diana agreed. I've been offered a position with an art gallery there. Not glamorous, but honest work. Victor nodded, acknowledging the implied contrast with her past choices. There's something I've wanted to ask you for years, Diana said after a brief silence. Something I could never understand. What's that? Why didn't you expose me publicly, she asked. You had evidence of what Philip and I had planned, the money we'd diverted. You could have ruined me completely, pressed charges even. But you didn't. Victor considered the question carefully. Would that have served any purpose beyond petty satisfaction? Most people in your position would have wanted that satisfaction, Diana pointed out. I'm not most people, Victor replied simply. Public humiliation and legal prosecution weren't necessary. You lost what you valued most, status, wealth, security. That was consequence enough. Diana looked down at her hands. You always were more calculating than vengeful. I never appreciated that distinction until it was too late. Few did, Victor acknowledged. It was an advantage. They sat in silence for a moment, the years between them filled with unspoken truths. I have one last question, Diana said finally. Were you ever going to tell me? About Novice, about what you were really building all those years. Victor's expression remained neutral. No, why not? The hurt in her voice seemed genuine. 15 years of marriage, and you never trusted me with the truth. Trust is earned, Victor said simply. Your actions prove my instincts correct. Diana flinched, but didn't argue the point. I suppose I deserve that. It wasn't about deserving, Victor clarified. It was about recognizing reality. You married the man you thought I was, the reliable, moderately successful executive who would provide you with the lifestyle you wanted. You never showed interest in who I actually was. The brutal accuracy of his assessment left Diana momentarily speechless. I should go, she said finally, rising from her chair. Thank you for seeing me. I know you didn't have to. Victor stood as well. I wish you well in Chicago, Diana. I hope you find what you're looking for. She paused at the door, turning back with a sad smile. You know what's ironic? I could have had everything if I'd just been patient. If I just appreciated what was right in front of me all along. Perhaps, Victor acknowledged. But we'll never know. After Diana left, Victor returned to his work, the brief interruption from his past barely disrupting his focus. 5 years had dulled whatever emotional connection might have remained, leaving only clinical observations and philosophical reflections. Later that evening, Victor attended a charity gala where he was receiving an award for novices' humanitarian initiatives. As he delivered his acceptance speech, he noticed Gerald Harmon in the audience, now fully retired but still a respected figure in certain circles. After the formalities, Gerald approached him at the bar. Impressive speech. You've become quite the public figure. When necessary, Victor replied, accepting a glass of scotch from the bartender. I saw Diana today, Gerald mentioned casually. She said she came to see you. Victor raised an eyebrow. You're still in touch with my ex-wife? Occasionally, Gerald admitted. She checks on Philip through me sometimes. Old habits. And how is your son? Victor asked, his tone neutral. Gerald sighed, struggling. Some lessons take longer to learn than others. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Two men who had once been adversaries, but had reached a kind of understanding over the years. You know what I could never figure out? Gerald said eventually. Whether you planned all of this from the beginning, or if you were just exceptionally prepared when opportunity presented itself. Victor smiled slightly. Does it matter? I suppose not, Gerald conceded. The result? is the same either way. As the evening progressed, Victor moved through the crowd with practiced ease, fulfilling his obligations as Novice's founder and CEO. To the outside world, he appeared the consummate business leader, confident, articulate, visionary. Only those who had known him longest, like Leo, recognized the calculated nature of each interaction, the careful separation between Victor's public persona and his true self. Another successful conquest, Leo observed as they left the gala. The Morrison Foundation will be announcing their partnership with Novice next week. As expected, Victor replied, their board was impressed with our sustainable technology initiatives. Leo studied his friend as they waited for their cars. Diana's visit didn't unsettle you at all, did it? Should have. Most people would feel something. Anger, satisfaction, nostalgia. Something. Victor considered this. I felt confirmation that the assessments I made and the actions I took were correct. Enclosure. Leo pressed. Did you get that? I never needed it, Victor said simply. This chapter was closed years ago. Later that night, in the solitude of his penthouse, Victor reviewed the final acquisition papers for a European technology firm that would complete Novice's global expansion strategy. The moves he had set in motion years earlier were continuing to unfold with precision, each piece falling into place according to his design. A text message from Raymond Frost interrupted his work, PH attempting to secure funding in Hong Kong for new venture, using your name as leverage with potential investors. Victor's expression hardened momentarily. Even after 5 years, Philip Harmon hadn't learned his lesson. Some people never did. Handle it, Victor texted back. Quietly, he returned to his work without further thought. Philip's desperate attempts at relevance were beneath his concern now, a minor irritation to be dealt with efficiently and then forgotten. The man who had once fired him with casual arrogance, laughing about streamlining and non-essential personnel, was now reduced to trading on Victor's name to secure meetings with second-tier investors. Justice had a certain elegance when properly executed. As dawn broke over Manhattan, Victor stood at his window, watching the city come to life. The empire he had built from the ruins of betrayal now stretched across continents, employing thousands and transforming industries. What had begun as a contingency plan, protection against the very betrayal that had eventually come, had evolved into something far greater than mere revenge. In the end, Victor reflected, that was the fundamental difference between him and those who had underestimated him. Philip, Diana, even Gerald in his way. They had all been reactive, responding to immediate desires and threats without seeing the larger pattern. Victor had always looked further ahead, planning not just for the next move, but for dozens of potential scenarios. The phone on his desk chimed with a reminder. The quarterly board meeting would begin in an hour. Victor turned from the window, leaving behind reflections on the past. The architect had completed his work of ruin and rebirth. What remained now was to build the future, one calculated move at a time. In the boardroom, surrounded by the leadership team he had carefully selected, Victor presented the company's 5-year strategic plan.